How does this guy go from being a farmer?
Luke, tell your uncle if he gets a translator, be sure it speaks Bocce.
Doesn't look like we have much of a choice, but I'll remind him.
To becoming a badass space wizard who fights with a damn lightsaber. Today, I'll be going over the incredible story of all the Star Wars movies so far. Honestly, it's going to be one heck of a spacefaring, tear-jerking adventure. And just so you know, I didn't watch Star Wars before making this video, cause I'm an idiot. But hey, I finally did for you. And maybe it'll be refreshing to experience the story from the perspective of someone who is watching it fresh. So strap in your seatbelts and, well, let's get right into it. Star Wars is one of the most legendary movie franchises of all time, famously created by George Lucas. The first movie came out in 1977 and was originally just titled Star Wars, but got renamed to Star Wars Episode IV: A New Hope 4 years later. Since then, we've had a total of 13 movies in the franchise. Now, fans who want to watch Star Wars already wonder if they should go with chronological order or with release order. After going through several fan discussions, I think it's best to go with release order. Let's experience the masterpiece in the order it was written. Honestly, this is going to be a totally badass and battle-heavy adventure. And if you like iconic Star Wars battles as much as I do, then you're going to absolutely love Transformers Eternal War. Transformers Eternal War is a strategy mobile game from Hasbro that's now open for pre-registration. What's really cool about the game is that for the very first time, it will let you see Autobots and Decepticons join forces. That's right, the guys who have been at each other's throats for centuries fight together against a brand new enemy called the Chaos Legion. Like, can you imagine Jazz and Starscream fighting for the same cause? I never thought I'd say that, but that's the Transformers story I definitely needed. This original storyline for the game is written by the legendary Transformers writer Simon Furman, and it is brought to life with impressive voice acting from some of the most well-known artists from Transformers and, of course, amazing cinematic 3D visuals. The gameplay of Transformers Eternal War is all about strategy. You get to recruit iconic characters like Optimus Prime, Megatron, and many more to build your own 5-bot squad, so you can mix and match their unique abilities and create powerful team combinations to beat the crap out of the enemies. Speaking of enemies, Transformers Eternal War throws in several challenging boss fights, and each enemy comes with unique fighting mechanics, so you'll have to choose your squad accordingly. And if that's not enough to keep you hooked, you should know that Transformers Eternal War has over 10 different gameplay modes. It means you'll battle in the skies, fight over valuable resources, and explore challenging dungeons. Basically, there will always be something new for you to master. Taking on the battles head-on never gets boring in Transformers Eternal War, but the game also allows you to do a lot of work off the battlefield when not fighting. You can manage and even expand resources within the Ark, the iconic Transformers spaceship. To top it all off, the game allows you to automate resource management. It basically means your troops will continue to grow and gather supplies even when you're offline. So you take a quick break to grab some coffee and your troops will still be combat ready for the next battle. Honestly, Transformers Eternal War is a bold new evolution of the incredible franchise. And if it sounds like your kind of game, which I am sure it is, click the link in the pinned comment and pre-register for Transformers Eternal War right now. By pre-registering, you will unlock Jazz and Bumblebee as exclusive rewards. On top of that, you will also get the cool Transformers the Movie 40th Anniversary in-game nameplate and an avatar frame. Also, a quick disclaimer, to get these rewards, you have to first click on the promotional link. Then you must tap the Activate button on the same device and browser session to complete your account registration. Seriously, you really don't want to miss out on Transformers Eternal War or the amazing exclusive rewards. So what are you waiting for? Get to it right now. Alright, now let's get back to the Star Wars story. Star Wars Episode IV: A New Hope. Star Wars Episode 4 kicks off 19 years after the formation of the Galactic Empire, a massive, tyrannical government that has taken over the galaxy. And as expected, things are not great. There's a galactic civil war going on between the Empire and the Rebel Alliance, who are basically the good guys fighting back against the Empire. After years of struggle, though, the rebels just pulled off a huge win. Apparently, they managed to steal the blueprints to the Empire's most fearsome secret weapon, the Death Star. For context, the Death Star is a planet-sized space station capable of destroying, well, planets. Jeez, yeah. Good idea to keep this away from the bad guys. Anywho, we then meet Leia Organa, a representative of the planet Alderaan. Leia is also a princess because she was adopted by the royal family of Alderaan. On the surface, Leia is a member of the Imperial Senate, which is basically the Empire's legislative body and the last fragment of the old democratic government. But in reality, she's a secret rebel operative. In fact, Leia is holding on to the Death Star plans and trying to get home on her ship, the Tantive 4. Her plan is pretty simple. Use the blueprints for the Death Star to take down the Empire and free the galaxy. However, Leia's plan falls flat on its face when her ship gets intercepted by a Star Destroyer, which is basically a deadly and really massive enemy ship. Darn it! Now, right above the desert planet Tatooine, the Star Destroyer pulls in Leia's ship. Next, stormtroopers, the Empire's basic soldiers, flood onto the ship. Even with their terrible aim, the stormtroopers quickly gun down the small crew defending Leia's ship. In the middle of all this mess, we meet C-3PO, a golden droid who's just scared because of all the shooting. So, C-3PO is trying to hide along with R2-D2, who is basically a rolling droid, with a big heart. However, to make things worse for Leia and her droids, the legendary Darth Vader arrives on the ship. Now, we'll learn a great deal about Darth Vader later on, but for now, let's just say that he is the primary enforcer of the Galactic Empire. Naturally, Darth Vader is looking for the Death Star plans, and he kills the ship's captain right away.
If this is a consular ship, where is the ambassador?
Jeez. Meanwhile, we see Princess Leia giving something, possibly a message, to R2-D2. So while C-3PO and R2-D2 get the hell off the ship using a pod, Leia tries to fight off some stormtroopers, but she eventually gets captured. Now Lord Vader confronts Leia about the Death Star blueprints, but Leia says that she was on a diplomatic mission and doesn't know what the hell he is talking about. But of course, Vader's not buying Leia's story even for a second, and he throws her in a cell. After that, Vader sends a fake-ass story to the Imperial Senate that the Tantive 4 was destroyed and there are no survivors. After that, Vader tells Commander Prodigy, one of his officers, to track down the escape pod carrying R2-D2 and C-3PO. Meanwhile, the robot duo lands on Tatooine, but soon, they get captured by Jawas, small hooded scavenger creatures who roam the desert. Basically, Jawas are known for collecting and selling droids, and they throw R2-D2 and C-3PO into their massive rolling fortress called a sandcrawler. Yeah, it's not looking good for Team Droid. Now the Jawas take the droids to a moisture farm, which is basically a place that harvests water straight out of the desert air. Well, this farm is owned by a man named Owen Lars and his wife Beru, who want to buy these droids to help on their farm. We also meet Owen's nephew, Luke Skywalker, a young man who grew up on this farm after losing his parents as a baby. Unlike his uncle, Luke doesn't want to spend his life on this farm. Instead, Luke wants to become an Imperial starfighter pilot like his friends. Anywho, after seeing what the Jawas have to offer, Luke and Owen end up buying C-3PO and R2-D2. Later, Luke decides to clean up R2-D2 because it clearly looks rough. However, while cleaning the droid, Luke accidentally triggers a snippet of Leia's holographic message. The message is glitchy, so the droid isn't able to play the full message. But for now, Luke can hear Leia asking someone called Obi-Wan Kenobi for help. Of course, Luke doesn't know who this woman is in the message, but he's definitely interested in hearing the full message. Also, after hearing Obi-Wan Kenobi's name, Luke wonders if the woman is talking about his old neighbor, a hermit everyone knows as Ben Kenobi. Very much possible. Anywho, before leaving for dinner, Luke asks C-3PO to restore the full message by fixing the other droid. At dinner, Luke gets pissed after hearing that Owen wants him to stay at the farm for one more harvest. Luke wants to apply for the Imperial Academy and get the hell away from this dry-ass planet. Luke also asks Owen if Ben Kenobi's real name is Obi-Wan Kenobi. While it seems like Owen knows something, he doesn't answer the question. In fact, Owen says to Luke that this Obi-Wan guy died at the same time as Luke's father. Yeah, I don't think so, old man. Eventually, Owen tells Luke to take R2 to a place called the Anchorhead to get his memory wiped. Apparently, Owen doesn't want the droid to return to his former master. R2-D2 has other plans though, because later that night, the little droid slips out of the farm looking for Obi-Wan. Early next morning, Luke and C-3PO rush out to find the droid, so Owen doesn't kill them. Well, it takes a while, but Luke eventually finds R2-D2. However, before Luke can figure out what the hell is wrong with this rebellious droid, they get ambushed by Tusken Raiders, or Sand People, the dangerous, masked native warriors of Tatooine. The poor guy gets knocked out, and right then, his neighbor Ben Kenobi shows up and helps the boy and his droids. In that moment, Luke reveals that R2-D2 is looking for someone called Obi-Wan. And well, Ben reveals that it's him. I mean, he's Obi-Wan.
Well, of course I know him. He's me. I haven't gone by the name of Obi-Wan since before you were born.
Ooh, interesting. Now Obi-Wan takes Luke and the droids to his home, where the old man reveals that he fought alongside Luke's father during the Clone Wars. Now, you might be wondering, what the hell are the Clone Wars? Well, patience guys, we'll get to that later. Moving on, Obi-Wan gives Luke a lightsaber, an energy sword used by Jedi Knights. Obi-Wan also reveals that he and Luke's father were Jedi, the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic, which was the era before the Empire. Obi-Wan further reveals that Luke's father was killed by Darth Vader, who, shockingly, was a student of Obi-Wan himself. Not only that, but Darth Vader hunted down several Jedi for the Empire, and now, the Jedi are almost extinct. Ah, crap. Apparently, Darth Vader was corrupted by the dark side of the Force, an energy field that binds all living things together. In fact, the Force is what gives Jedi their powers. While Jedi are influenced by the light side of the Force, which makes them good, Darth Vader was influenced by the dark side, which made him an evil Sith. And that is why Darth Vader is also known as the Sith Lord. As soon as Obi-Wan finishes this info dump, R2-D2 plays the full message of Princess Leia. Basically, Leia has asked Obi-Wan, who fought alongside Leia's father a while back, to take R2-D2 to Alderaan. Apparently, Leia has hidden some vital information for the rebellion inside the droid, and only her father can unlock it. As expected, Obi-Wan agrees to head to Alderaan and even asks Luke to tag along. However, Luke isn't ready for this adventure yet, and he agrees to drop Obi-Wan off at Anchorhead. But that's it. Meanwhile, the Star Destroyer arrives on the Death Star. There, we meet General Cassio Tag and Admiral Conan Antonio Motti, who are worried about a rebel attack if they get their hands on the Death Star's blueprints. Right then, we meet Grand Moff Tarkin, the Death Star's cold, Jerkwad commander. Tarkin reveals to the generals that the Emperor has dissolved the Imperial Senate entirely. Basically, the last trace of the old democratic government is just gone. At this point, Motti gets cocky and says that the Death Star is the ultimate power. But of course, Vader doesn't like this one bit. Vader even demonstrates the power of the Force by telekinetically choking Motti. And of course, Vader doesn't kill the guy, not while he's still useful. Back on Tatooine, Luke, Obi-Wan, and droids come across a destroyed sandcrawler. Yeah, the same one Jawas used to sell R2 and C-3PO. And sadly, the Jawas are all dead. Oh gosh. Obi-Wan confirms that stormtroopers did all this to hunt down the droids. Immediately, Luke realizes stormtroopers must have tracked the droids back to the farm, so he rushes back home. But it's too damn late. The farm is destroyed, and to make things worse, Owen and Beru are dead, killed by those same nutjobs we call stormtroopers. Holy f***. They literally burnt the flesh off those poor guys. Meanwhile, Vader decides to use some sort of interrogation droid on Leia to learn about the rebellion's secret base. On Tatooine, Luke tells Obi-Wan that he wants to go to Alderaan because there's nothing left for him here. So, Obi-Wan takes Luke and the droids to Mos Eisley, a lawless spaceport full of criminals and, of course, a heck of a lot of stormtroopers. Obi-Wan thinks they can find a ship and a pilot to get them to Alderaan at Mos Eisley. However, as soon as they get there, Luke and the gang get rounded up by a bunch of stormtroopers. But guess what? Obi-Wan uses a Jedi mind trick, a Force ability that lets him plant suggestions in weak-minded people to get away. Handy. Now Obi-Wan and the gang head into a filthy bar packed with aliens and all sorts of shady characters. Inside the bar, Obi-Wan finds Han Solo, a confident and charming smuggler, and his co-pilot Chewbacca, a massive Wookiee who we also call Chewie. Interestingly, Wookiee are a species of tall, fur-covered beings known for their strength and loyalty. Anywho, Han agrees to take Obi-Wan and his gang to Alderaan for the right price. And for that, Han will use his legendary ship, the Millennium Falcon, which may look rough but is incredibly fast. Before they leave though, Han gets confronted by Jabba the Hutt, a ruthless alien crime lord. Apparently, Han owes some money to Jabba, but Han promises to pay what he owes and a little extra if he gets more time. And since Jabba is such a trusting alien, he lets Han leave. For now. Now that Jabba is off Han's back, Luke and the gang get attacked by stormtroopers. Give him a break. So the gang gets inside Han's ship and gets the hell out of there. When the Imperial ships try to chase down the Millennium Falcon, Han not only destroys them with his ship, but also uses light speed to reach Alderaan. Meanwhile, on the Death Star, we learn that Vader didn't learn crap from Leia using his interrogation droid. So, Tarkin decides to use a rather traditional approach. Shockingly, this old geezer threatens to destroy Alderaan, Leia's planet, right in front of her. However, Leia can save her planet by giving away the Rebel base. And since Leia is left with no choice, she tells the old jerk that the Rebel base is on Dantooine. After getting the information he needs, Tarkin decides to destroy Alderaan anyway. Dude, he killed millions of people. Sick bastard. Back on the Millennium Falcon, Obi-Wan somehow senses that millions of lives just vanished from the galaxy. Regardless, he keeps on training Luke on how to use the Force. Of course, using the Force ain't a piece of cake, but slowly, Luke seems to be getting the hang of it. Dude even manages to block some beam attacks while completely blinded. Meanwhile, Tarkin learns that there's no Rebel base on Dantooine, so obviously, he gets pissed and orders Leia to be executed. Around this time, the Millennium Falcon finally reaches the planet Alderaan. But hey, the planet is already destroyed. I mean, Alderaan is nothing but dust at this point. Instead, Luke and the gang see the Death Star just hanging out in the middle of nowhere. Of course, Han tries to take a U-turn, but it's of no use. Falcon instantly gets pulled inside the Death Star through the tractor beam. My god, what are these guys gonna do now? The stormtroopers get inside the Falcon, but Obi-Wan and the gang hide inside the smuggling compartments to buy some more time. Cleverly, Han and Luke beat the hell out of some stormtroopers inside the Falcon and steal their white uniforms. Now in disguise, the gang gets inside one of the Death Star's control rooms. There, Obi-Wan decides to head out solo and disable the tractor beam so they can escape. Meanwhile, Luke and the rest of the gang decide to wait around for Obi-Wan to do his thing. But right then, R2-D2 detects Leia nearby and confirms that she's going to be executed soon. So Luke decides to help Leia because he can't let an innocent soul just die. Han, on the other hand, hates the plan, but he agrees to help, hoping that Leia will reward him with a lot of money. I mean, she's literally a princess, so money won't be a problem. Now Luke and Han wear the stormtrooper uniform and pretend Chewie is their prisoner, and eventually, they reach the detention center where they are holding Leia. At this point, the assholes on the Death Star realize something is off, so Luke and Han are left with no choice but to attack. Now, while Han keeps on firing at the stormtroopers, Luke finally frees Princess Leia. During all this, Obi-Wan manages to disable the tractor beam. However, while the old man is on his way back to the Falcon, he runs into Vader. Uh-oh. Vader pulls out his red lightsaber and starts to fight Obi-Wan. In the middle of the fight, Obi-Wan says something weird, that if Vader strikes him down, Obi-Wan will become more powerful. Now, what the hell does that mean? Around this time, Luke and his gang also reach the Falcon, and they see Obi-Wan having a cool-ass lightsaber fight with Vader. In that moment though, Obi-Wan decides to sacrifice himself to create a distraction and let Luke and the gang escape. Dude, his body just vanished. How? Luke is heartbroken to see the old man go, but he has no choice but to get the hell out of there on the Falcon. The enemy ship tries to follow the Falcon, but Han and Luke blast away all of them. Now, Leia takes Luke and the gang to the jungle moon Yavin 4, the real Rebel base. There, Luke and Han meet the Rebel Alliance and General Dodonna, who finally pulls out the Death Star blueprints from R2-D2. After studying the blueprints, Dodonna deduces that a small thermal exhaust port leads straight down into the Death Star's main reactor. So, one precise hit down that exhaust will trigger a chain reaction and destroy the Death Star. Of course, Luke gets all set to join the fight by flying a fighter plane, but he's pissed that Han wants to leave now that he's got his reward from Leia. However, Han clarifies that he has no interest in fighting for the rebellion. He just cares about the money. Come on, dude. Don't be selfish. Also, it turns out that Tarkin has tracked down the Falcon's location and they've arrived near Yavin 4. Not only that, but they only need 30 minutes to destroy the Rebel base. Regardless, Luke and a whole bunch of Rebel pilots, including Luke's buddy from back home, Biggs Darklighter, fly towards the Death Star. They're all set to launch a strike on the Death Star's weak point. There's one problem though. Darth Vader has been hunting down the Rebel pilots on his TIE fighter spacecraft. This dude is so freaking terrifying that he kills almost every Rebel pilot, including Biggs. At this point, only Luke is left, so he must finish the job. Right then, Luke starts to hear Obi-Wan's voice, who tells the boy to let the Force flow within him to fire precisely into the Death Star's exhaust. Luke can hear Obi-Wan's voice because, while the dude is dead, he has become one with the Force. To make it simple, Obi-Wan has become a spirit who can talk to Luke anytime he likes. Moving back to the movie, to make things a little bit easier for Luke, Han suddenly shows up on his ship and fires at Vader, knocking him away from the Death Star. And finally, Luke uses the Force to fire at the Death Star's weak point, which, well, blasts the darn planet-sized weapon into pieces. Vader, on the other hand, drifts away deep into space. So yeah, you'll see him in the next film. Now Luke, Han, and Wedge Antilles, one of the surviving pilots, make it back to Yavin 4 as heroes. Finally, Leia gives medals to Luke and Han for their bravery. And yeah, it seems like Han has decided to stick around to help the rebels against the Empire. Star Wars Empire Strikes Back kicks off 3 years after the Death Star blew up. However, things haven't exactly been easy peasy for the rebels ever since. Apparently, Darth Vader has forced the rebels to flee from Yavin 4, and now they're hiding out on Hoth, this brutal ice planet. They should really call it Kolth. Also, Vader is desperately looking for Luke and launches thousands of droids to look for the young boy all over the galaxy, and unfortunately, one of the droids finds its way to Hoth. Speaking of Luke, he's currently out on patrol in the icy cold desert, but right then, he gets knocked out by a Wampa, a nasty, hulking ice creature who likes to eat flesh. The Wampa then drags Luke to God knows where. Oh god. Back at the base, Han is ready to leave the rebellion to go back and pay up Jabba the Hutt. Remember, he owes a lot of money to that massive alien crime lord. In the romance department, Han thinks that Leia likes him, but is pissed that she doesn't outright confess her feelings. Give her time, man. She'll come around. However, before Han can leave, he learns that Luke hasn't returned, so Han heads out to find his friend before he dies from the cold. Luke, on the other hand, is hanging upside down in Wampa's cave. It's pretty clear that Wampa will make Luke into his snack pretty soon. Since Luke isn't keen on getting eaten, he uses the Force for the first time to pull his lightsaber out of the snow. Then, he frees himself and cuts off the Wampa's hand before escaping. Unfortunately, though, it's too damn cold out there, so he passes out in the middle of nowhere. Before losing consciousness, though, Luke sees the spirit of Obi-Wan, who asks Luke to go to the planet called Dagobah. There, Obi-Wan wants Luke to train under a Jedi Master named Yoda. Luke now falls unconscious, but fortunately, Han finds the poor guy and saves him by stuffing him inside the guts of a horse-like creature called a Tauntaun. The next day, the rebels find both Han and Luke alive and bring the duo back to the base. It takes some fancy treatment, but Luke finally regains consciousness. Even at this point, Han can't help but flirt with Leia, so she kisses Luke instead just to get Han off her back. Nah, I'm Team Han for this. Later, the rebels learn that one of Vader's droids has arrived on Hoth, so there's a chance that Vader knows about the rebel base. After hearing all this, General Riecken, the commander of the rebel forces on Hoth, decides to leave the planet as soon as possible. Elsewhere, Vader is on his massive ship, the Executor. There, we meet Admiral Ozzel, who learns that a droid was destroyed on Hoth. Ozzel thinks that some smugglers must have done that. However, Vader isn't convinced and orders the whole fleet to head towards Hoth. That's not good. It doesn't take long for Vader's forces to reach Hoth. However, Admiral Ozzel drops out of light speed too close to Hoth, ruining any chance of a surprise attack. This sends an alert on Hoth, allowing the rebels to activate the energy shield around the planet. Of course, this energy shield won't stop Vader from arriving at the planet, but it will stop Vader from launching an energy attack from one of his Devastator ships. So of course, Vader gets pissed at Ozzel and telekinetically chokes him to death.
Make ready to land our troops beyond their energy field, then deploy the fleet so that nothing gets off the system. You are in command now, Admiral Piet.
Yeah, it's best not to piss off Vader. Anywho, Vader's forces now touch down on the planet, and of course, the rebels try their best to fight back, but the stormtroopers basically ransack the entire place. And to make things worse, Vader's ground forces include AT-AT walkers, which are really massive and weird combat vehicles. Seriously though, what the hell is that thing? Now, when things start to get out of hand, the rebels start to evacuate Hoth without getting noticed by Vader's ships. Luke is out on the battlefield with other pilots, and he even takes out one of the AT-AT walkers by himself. Meanwhile, Han, Leia, Chewie, and C-3PO decide to escape the planet on the Falcon, because Vader is incredibly close to catching them. Around the same time, Luke also picks up R2-D2 and flies out of Hoth. While everyone expects that Luke will meet up with them at the rendezvous point, Luke has other plans. In a shocking turn of events, yeah, the same place where he can find this guy Yoda. Okay. Han's group, on the other hand, gets chased down by the enemy ships. Because the Falcon is damaged, Han can't jump to light speed. So Smarty Pants Han flies the Falcon into a massive asteroid and finds a massive cave to hide in. That's smart, but risky. Later, Luke lands on Dagobah, which is actually a swampy planet filled with some dangerous monsters. There, Luke runs into a small green creature poking around his bag. Hey, that's not nice. This creature speaks broken English, but he tells Luke that he knows Yoda and will take the boy to him. Back on the Falcon, Han makes his move on Leia while she's working on repairs, and the two finally share a passionate kiss. Aww. Meanwhile, Darth Vader orders his minions to keep looking for the Falcon. Right then, Vader gets a video call from none other than his boss, Emperor Palpatine, the ultimate ruler of the Empire. The Emperor warns Darth Vader about Luke Skywalker, who, surprisingly, carries enough force to destroy the Empire. Not only that, but the Emperor also tells Vader that Luke is the son of Anakin Skywalker. At first, the Emperor wants Vader to kill Luke before the boy can become a Jedi, but Vader suggests turning Luke to the dark side of the Force as well. Basically, Vader thinks, why lose someone who can be a great asset? And the Emperor sees some sense in it, so he orders Vader to bring Luke into him. Speaking of Luke, the guy learns that the weird green creature is actually the great master who has been teaching Jedi for the last 800 years. Sheesh, she's old. Obi-Wan's spirit is also there, and he asks Yoda to train Luke. Yoda thinks that Luke is too restless for the ways of the Jedi, but he agrees to train him anyway. Cut back to the Falcon. Han learns that the cave he just flew into is actually the stomach of a massive creature. Talk about bad luck. Anywho, Han is able to fly out of the creature's stomach right on time. Not only that, but Han is also able to get away from Vader's ship without getting detected. Now that things have gotten out of hand, Vader brings in a group of bounty hunters, including the mysterious and most feared bounty hunter known as Boba Fett. Now, while Luke continues to learn how to move things using his mind, Han decides to take Leia to Cloud City, which, just like it sounds, literally floats in the sky. Apparently, Han's old friend Lando lives in Cloud City, so Han thinks they will be safe there. Sadly though, Boba Fett secretly follows the Falcon, so it's possible that Darth Vader already knows about Han's plans. Uh-oh. Meanwhile, during the training session, Luke sees Han and his friends dead in Cloud City. What? At this point, Yoda explains that Jedi can sometimes use the Force to see the future. Okay. That's amazing. Of course, Luke wants to leave so that he can save his friends, but Yoda still thinks Luke isn't ready to take on Vader yet. Next, Han arrives in Cloud City, where he meets Lando, who actually seems friendly. Too friendly. While strolling inside Lando's place, C-3PO stumbles upon a room where someone shoots the poor droid down, shattering him into pieces. Oh no! At this point, Luke prepares to leave Dagobah to help his friends, even though Yoda and Obi-Wan think it's a mistake. That's because Luke hasn't become a Jedi yet. Before Luke leaves, Obi-Wan tells Luke not to give in to hate. That's how someone gets influenced by the dark side. Yeah, maybe don't do that, Luke. Once Luke leaves, Obi-Wan says Luke is their last hope against the Empire. But then Yoda says that there's someone else too. Wait, Who? Not gonna tell us now? Alright, back in the Cloud City. Chewie finds the broken parts of C-3PO and decides to fix the poor droid. But that's the least of Han's problems, because it turns out that Lando is working with Darth Vader. Well, he's not working with Vader per se, but since no one wants to piss off the Empire, Lando is left with no choice but to hand over Han and Leia to Vader. Yeah, shouldn't have done that, Lando. Now, while Vader tortures Leia and Han, Chewie tries to put C-3PO back together, but accidentally reattaches his head backward. Oh, come on. After the torture session, backstabbing Lando tells the group that Leia, Chewie, and C-3PO will be kept in Cloud City, or at least they'll be safe. Han, on the other hand, will be handed over to Boba Fett, who will take him to Jabba the Hutt. At this point, it's pretty clear that Vader has been setting up one big trap for Luke. And once he arrives here, Vader plans on using carbon freezing on Luke to take him to the Emperor. Carbon freezing? The hell is that? However, Vader wants to make sure that carbon freezing doesn't kill Luke, so he decides to use it on Han first as a test. Okay, that's totally unfair. Well, the test works and poor Han is frozen solid into carbonite. Holy, that looks painful. But hey, at least he isn't dead. Now Vader hands frozen Han over to Boba Fett for transport to Tatooine. At the same time, Vader orders Leia and C-3PO to be sent over to his ship, which, well, wasn't part of his agreement with Lando. So naturally the guy's pissed at Vader, but what the hell can he do about it? Around this time, Luke arrives in the Cloud City. However, before he can save Leia or anyone else, he gets confronted by Vader himself. Speaking of Leia's group, Lando finally comes back to his senses and orders his men to turn on the stormtroopers. Immediately after that, he frees Leia and Chewie, who race towards Boba Fett's ship before he can leave with Han. But it's too late. Boba Fett's ship has already left. Ah, damn it. Next, Lando orders a full evacuation of Cloud City, and the group makes a run for the Millennium Falcon. Elsewhere, Luke fights Vader head-on. But as feared, the boy is still no match for Vader. During the fight, Luke and Vader arrive in some sort of city's air ventilation system. There, Vader uses his lightsaber to cut off Luke's right arm. He's not holding back, is he? At this moment, Vader reveals that he wants Luke to join him so they can rule the universe. Not only that, but Vader reveals to Luke that he is, wait for it, Luke's father.
I am your father.
Hold on, what? Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker? Obviously, Luke is shaken after hearing this, and Vader says that Luke is destined to destroy the Emperor. And once that's done, the father and son duo can take over everything together. However, instead of listening to this crap, Luke jumps down the massive shaft below him and grabs an antenna underneath the city. At this point, Leia, along with Lando, had already flown away from the city. However, Luke uses the Force to reach out to Leia and reveal his location. And, well, it actually works. And Leia takes a U-turn to grab an injured Luke. Then R2-D2 fixes the Falcon, allowing the ship to go into light speed and the hell away from Vader. A few days later, we see Luke getting a rather fancy prosthetic arm. Meanwhile, Lando and Chewie prepare to head out on a dangerous new mission, rescuing Han. Lando promises Leia they'll bring back her lover boy. Finally, Luke, Leia, and the droids watch Lando and Chewie flying out in the Falcon. Star Wars: Return of the Jedi kicks off a year after the events of the previous movie. As it turns out, Luke and Leia have returned to Tatooine, his home planet, to rescue Han. Turns out, Lando and Chewie never returned after they headed out to find Han. So Leia and Luke decided to finish the job themselves. However, what Luke doesn't know is that while he's busy on this mission, the Empire is building a second Death Star, which is much stronger than the first one. Why can't you just make it out of Lego like the rest of us did? Now, while we see Vader landing on the incomplete second Death Star, where he meets Moff Jerjerrod, the guy responsible for building the Death Star, turns out Vader isn't all that happy that the construction is behind schedule. So he asks Moff to hurry up unless he wants to get toasted by the Emperor himself. On Tatooine, R2-D2 and C-3PO show up in front of Jabba the Hutt carrying a holographic message from Luke. In the message, Luke asks Jabba to release Han, for a price of course. To sweeten the deal, Luke even offers R2-D2 and C-3PO droids as gifts to Jabba. Yeah, Luke is planning something. Obviously, Jabba has no plan to release Han, but he still takes the two droids. Oh, also, it turns out that Han is still frozen in carbon. and this ugly-ass alien Jabba has hung Han on the wall like a freaking decoration. Poor Han. Later that night, a bounty hunter called Boushh drags in a captured Chewie in front of Jabba. Of course, Jabba is over the moon that Chewie is captured, so he agrees to pay Boushh the bounty reward. Now, while Chewie is thrown in a cell, Boushh finds Portrait Han and uses heat to free him from the carbonite. At this point, we learn that Boushh is actually Leia in disguise. Ooh, Leia to the rescue. Also, it's important to note that all this time, Lando has also been disguised as one of Jabba's soldiers. Anywho, before Leia and Han can escape, Jabba catches them. In fact, Jabba always knew that this so-called bounty hunter was up to something. Now, Jabba throws Han in the same cell as Chewie, so these two finally reunite after almost a year. At the same time, Jabba forces Leia to wear a slave costume. The sick bastard even puts a chain on Leia's neck. Yeah, this alien needs some ass whooping. Since everything is so dang messed up, Luke arrives on his own to speak to Jabba. Surprisingly, at this point, Luke can use the Jedi mind trick to influence, just like Obi-Wan used to use it on weak-minded people. But of course, Jabba is no weak-minded alien, so he captures Luke and throws him into the pit. Inside this pit, Jabba unleashes an ugly-ass monster called the Rancor on Luke. But hey, Luke has a lot more Star Wars movies to do, so he doesn't die and beats the Rancor's ass instead. Yeah, suck it, Rancor. Of course, Jabba is pissed, so he asks his guards to grab Luke, Han, and Chewie. Then, he orders his men to take the captives to Dune Sea at the Great Pit of Carkoon. Apparently, a massive man-eating creature called Sarlacc is buried in that place, and Jabba wants Luke's gang to be the creature's food. What's worse is that the Sarlacc takes over a century to digest its food, so it will be a really painful experience. Yeah. I don't like this at all. Of course, the droids are safe because they work for Jabba now, even though they hate it. Leia is still chained and treated like an animal. And then we have Lando, who still hasn't given up on his disguise. Anywho, Jabba now takes Luke, Han, and Chewie to Sarlacc's pit, and Jabba starts off by pushing Luke into the pit. However, instead of falling down, Luke uses the freaking Force to flip himself back up. Damn. Luke is a full-time Jedi Knight now. At the same moment, R2 launches Luke's brand new lightsaber out of a hidden compartment. Luke catches his fancy new laser sword and starts fighting Jabba's thugs. At this point, Lando also takes off his mask and joins Luke and Han to fight the enemy. Boba Fett, yeah, the bounty hunter who captured Han, joins the fight and tries to fight Luke and Han. The dude even shows off his fancy jetpack, but Han messes up the same jetpack, which sends Boba Fett right into Sarlacc's mouth. Ouch. It looks like that Boba Fett has died, but of course, he didn't. We actually learn that Boba survived the Sarlacc pit in the Mandalorian TV series. Meanwhile, Leia uses her chains, the same ones that Jabba put on her neck, to choke the scumbag alien crime lord to death. Is that what you call a chain reaction? Once that's done, Luke and the gang blow up Jabba's ship and they get the hell out of there. Now that Han is freed, Luke, along with R2-D2, decides to go back to the Dagobah system because he promised Yoda that he'd return after saving his friends. On the other hand, the rest of the crew take the Falcon towards Solist, the planet where the Rebel fleet is gathering. Back on the new Death Star, the Emperor himself, who's also known as Darth Sidious, arrives and praises Vader's progress. The Emperor also tells Vader that Luke will return to him and turn to the dark side. Apparently, everything has been unfolding as the Emperor foresaw. Keep dreaming, dude. Meanwhile, Luke and R2-D2 finally arrive on Dagobah, but they find Yoda dying. Oh no. Luke says he has come back to finish his training, but Yoda tells him there's nothing left to teach. Now, all that's left is for Luke to confront Vader. Finally, before taking his last breath, Yoda confirms that Vader is indeed Luke's father. After saying that, Yoda dies and becomes one with the Force, just like Obi-Wan. Now Luke heads back to his ship where Obi-Wan's spirit appears and reveals the rest of the story about Vader. Apparently, Vader was once a Jedi named Anakin Skywalker, but he fell to the dark side. Obi-Wan then drops another bomb. Turns out, Luke has a, wait for it, twin sister. Dude, what the hell is happening? Okay, so that's the other hope Yoda was talking about in the last movie, when Luke left the training midway. Surprisingly, Luke's sister was hidden away at birth to protect her from the Emperor. Since Luke has much better control over the Force, he immediately realizes his twin sister is Leia. You've got to be kidding me. Okay, a little fun fact. Interestingly, George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, never intended to make Luke and Leia siblings. Initially, they were planned as romantic interests. That is why these two shared a kiss in the second movie. It wasn't until the third movie that Lucas went in this brother-sister direction with Luke and Leia. Anywho, moving back to the story, Obi-Wan warns Luke to keep his feelings in check since the Emperor could exploit them. Cut to the Rebel fleet on Sullust, where the Rebels plan to strike the new Death Star. For this to work out though, someone will have to go to the forest moon of Endor and disable the shield generator protecting the Death Star. Once the shield generators are down, the Rebels can launch an attack on the Death Star, which still isn't complete. Of course, Han, Leia, Chewie, and the droids are all set to go on this mission. Right then, Luke also arrives to join his gang, but for now, Luke doesn't reveal the brother-sister bit to Leia. Good call. Now, Luke and the gang head out towards the forest moon, but what they don't know is that Vader has already sensed Luke's presence, so he deliberately lets Luke and the gang land undetected. Luke senses his father too, and starts to worry if Vader will end up killing his friends. Now, as soon as Luke's gang starts to move towards the shield generator, they get ambushed by a bunch of scouts. This leads to a high-speed bike chase through the forest, and while Luke and the guys win the fight, Leia gets thrown off her bike and knocked out. Darn it. After a little bit, Leia wakes up to find a small furry creature standing over her. This adorable creature is an Ewok, and is named Wicket. Just wait, it's gonna get even cuter than living teddy bears. Anywho, Wicket kinda likes Leia and helps her fight one of the scouts. Then, he takes Leia with him to God knows where. Later, Luke and the rest of the gang also get ambushed by a bunch of Ewoks. Not only do these creatures capture Luke and the gang, but they also want to cook Luke and Han. That doesn't sound good. What's even weirder is that Ewoks think of C-3PO as some sort of god. My man is finally getting the respect he deserves. Of course, C-3PO asks the Ewok to free Han and Luke, and well, it eventually works. As expected, Leia is also here, so the gang is back together. After that, the Ewoks agreed to join the human gang in their fight against the Empire, and they even throw a weird, but still great party. Later that night, Luke finally tells Leia that they are twins. Leia is shocked, but she says she has somehow always known this deep in her heart. It's clear that the Force also flows within Leia, and Luke says that with time, she will learn how to use it. But for now, Luke must confront Vader, and he wants to do it alone. Also, Luke doesn't want to kill Vader or whatever. In fact, he wants to save his father by bringing him back to the good side of the Force. That might work? Vader arrives by shuttle, and Luke, having already surrendered himself to the Empire, tries one last time to pull his father back from the dark side. It doesn't work, and Luke is taken into custody to be transported to the Death Star. The next day, the Rebels move on the shield generator while the fleet jumps to hyperspace, ready for the final battle. Aboard the station, Luke and Vader meet with the Emperor, who gloats that he's been controlling the situation the whole time. He deliberately let the Rebels find both the Death Star plans and the shield generator's location, setting up the entire attack as a trap. As promised, Luke now meets Vader and tries to bring him to the good side, but it doesn't work again. Even though it's clear that Vader also cares for his son, he still sends Luke to the Emperor. Meanwhile on Endor, Han and the team move towards the shield generator, and it looks like they are about to take it out. However, on the Death Star, the Emperor meets Luke and reveals that he intentionally led the rebel forces to the forest moon. In fact, Imperial forces are already waiting to capture the rebels on the moon. Damn it. Turns out the Emperor isn't wrong, because in the next moment, Han and the gang get captured by stormtroopers. Not only that, but the shield generators are still active, so the rebel ships can't do crap against the Death Star. Fortunately, back on the moon, the Ewok army attacks the stormtroopers out of nowhere, creating an opportunity for Han and the gang to fight back. However, the Emperor is still as cocky as ever, and he wants Luke to give in to his anger so he can be influenced by the dark side. And for that, the Emperor uses the Death Star, which shockingly is now operational, to destroy one of the rebel ships.
That blast came from the Death Star.
Holy hell, dude. The Emperor is truly ruthless. At this point, Luke loses his cool and attacks the Emperor with his lightsaber. But of course, Vader stops him with his own lightsaber. And now it's time for the second round between the father and son. Even at this point, it's clear that Luke is still holding back against Vader. However, Vader then uses the Force to look within Luke's emotions and learns that he has a daughter. So Vader threatens to turn Luke's sister to the dark side if Luke doesn't want to join him. Well, this pisses off Luke just enough for him to give in to hate. Then, in one swift move, Luke cuts off Vader's right hand, which turned out to be a mechanical hand. Now, the Emperor walks in like a creep and asks Luke to use his hate to strike down Vader and take his place. At this moment, Luke looks at his own mechanical right hand and realizes that if he lets the hate win, he will become just like his father. That's deep. So, Luke throws away his lightsaber and says to the cocky Emperor that he's a Jedi, like his father once was. Meanwhile, on the Forest Moon, Han and Leia manage to destroy the Death Star's shield generator. Since the shield is down, the Rebel forces launch a direct attack on the Death Star. So yeah, things are not going well for the Emperor, who, by the way, loses his and unleashes Force lightning on Luke. Poor Luke literally cries out for his father's help. Vader, on the other hand, finds it rather difficult to choose between his dying son and his master. Well, eventually, Vader chooses his son and turns back to the light side of the Force. Then he grabs the ugly-ass Emperor and throws him straight into the Death Star's reactor shaft, killing him right on the spot. I mean, there's no logical way he could possibly come back from that, right? During all this, though, the Emperor's lightning cuts through Vader's mechanical body, frying his life support systems. Oh no. Now, Luke tries to take his father to safety, but it's already too late for Vader. Sorry, Anakin. So Anakin asks Luke to remove his mask so the boy can look at his father beneath such a heavy mask. Once the mask is off, we see Anakin's pale and damaged face because the guy was wearing that mask for over 2 decades. After saying goodbye to Luke, Anakin dies peacefully. Oh man, that's such a good way to end Vader's story. Meanwhile, the Rebel forces get inside the heart of the second Death Star and blast it to pieces, just as they did with the first Death Star. During all this, Leia finally reveals to Han that Luke is her brother. Well, Han is over the moon because the dude thought he'd get stuck in some awful love triangle situation. We all thought the same, my friend. We all did. Later that night, Luke gives his father a proper burial while the entire universe celebrates the Emperor's defeat. Once all this is over, Luke sees the spirits of Obi-Wan, Yoda, and surprisingly his father Anakin. That's right, Anakin has become one with the Force. We finally got to see Anakin's real face. Love it. Star Wars: The Phantom Menace takes us 32 years before the events of A New Hope. It means this film is set almost 13 years before the Empire's formation. So yep, get ready to experience the era of the Jedi. Now, since there's no galactic empire right now, the galaxy is run by the Galactic Republic, so this is a rather peaceful time. But currently, the Republic is facing a trade dispute with a powerful and greedy as hell corporation called the Trade Federation. This dispute has escalated so much that the Trade Federation has blocked trade on the peaceful planet Naboo. Yeah, it's that bad. Now, to handle this mess, the head of the Republic's government, Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum, secretly sends 2 Jedi to negotiate with the Federation's leader, Viceroy Newt Gunray. These 2 Jedi are Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his young apprentice or Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's right, it's the same Obi-Wan who we know as one of Luke's mentors. Of course, this is supposed to be an easy talk-it-out mission, but what the Jedi don't know is that the Federation is secretly working for a mysterious Sith Lord named Darth Sidious. Wait, that's the same guy who later becomes the Emperor. Yeah, not good at all. Anywho, after learning about the Jedi's arrival, Sidious orders Gunray to kill them. Gunray isn't sure if killing the Jedi is the right move, but he doesn't want to piss off Sidious, so he agrees. And guess what? The assassination attempt fails horribly, and the Jedi fight through swarms of battle droids, which are basically the Federation's robotic soldiers. Once that's done, the Jedi duo split up and sneak aboard the Federation ships, which, by the way, are heading down to invade Naboo. Meanwhile, we see the Naboo's fancy capital city, Theed, where we meet Naboo's ruler, Queen Amidala. Amidala is worried about what the Federation might do next, and to make matters worse, it has blocked all communications on the planet. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon reunite on the surface of Naboo, where they rescue a clumsy local outcast named Jar Jar Binks. Interestingly, Jar Jar Binks is a member of an amphibious species called the Gun-Guns, who, well, are known for their distinct accents. Also, a little fun fact, unlike Jar Toon, which you guys all love so much, Jar Jar Binks is one of the most hated Star Wars characters. Many fans believe that Jar Jar Binks' clumsy humor was seriously out of place in a rather serious Star Wars story. In fact, many fans believe the character's dialect was a little racist.
More did you speak? Excuse me, but the most safest place would be Gonga City. It's where I grew up. 'Tis a hidden city.
Yeah, Miss, I'm not exactly a fan of that. Anywho, moving back to the story, Jar Jar takes the Jedi to his people's underwater city, Otoh Gunga. In the city, the Jedi duo meets the Gungan leader, Boss Nass, who refuses to help, but does give one of his underwater ships to the Jedi. Also, for some reason, nobody in Otoh Gunga likes Jar Jar, so he tags along with the Jedi. Now the Jedi reach Theed, Naboo's capital city, which has already been seized by the Federation. Not only that, but these assholes also captured Queen Amidala. Apparently, the Federation wants Amidala to sign a treaty with them to make this blockade legal in front of the Republic. But right then, the Jedi pulls out their fancy lightsabers and they rescue the Queen. Now the Jedi ask Amidala to come with them to the Republic's capital planet, Coruscant. There, Amidala asks Falarum for help directly. Well, Amidala tags along and they fly out of Naboo on a ship. However, the enemy ships fire at the good guys, which unfortunately damages their ship. However, a small and very adorable droid saves the damaged ship from crashing. And guess who this droid is? Well, it's R2-D2, of course. Sadly though, the ship still can't make the full trip to Coruscant, so the gang stops at Tatooine to do the full repairs. That's right, Tatooine is the same planet where Luke grew up. At this point, we also meet Padme, Queen Amidala's 14-year-old handmaiden, who accompanies Qui-Gon to Tatooine to get some help. Now, while Qui-Gon looks for a repairman, Padme runs into a 9-year-old slave boy named, wait for it, Anakin Skywalker. Yup, that's Luke's father and Darth freaking Vader. Unfortunately, Anakin's owner is a jerkwad insect alien called Watto. The adorable young Anakin realizes there's a storm coming, so he invites Qui-Gon and everyone else to his home. There, we meet Shmi Skywalker, Anakin's mother, who actually seems really nice. At his home, Anakin shows Padme the droid he's building right now, and, well, this droid is none other than C-3PO. C-3PO, my man, you'll do amazing things in a few years. Moving on, Qui-Gon wants to buy parts for his ship, but he doesn't have enough money to buy the parts from greedy Watto. So, Qui-Gon comes up with this amazing idea. Apparently, a big race is about to happen in the city soon, and Anakin wants to compete in it. So Qui-Gon decides to bet on Anakin. If the boy wins, Watto will have to give Qui-Gon the ship parts. And if the boy loses, Watto gets Qui-Gon's ship. At this point though, Qui-Gon starts to realize that there's something special about Anakin. Shockingly, a great amount of the Force, even more than with Yoda or any other Jedi, flows within Anakin. Qui-Gon suspects Anakin might be the Chosen One, a figure prophesized to bring balance to the Force. Okay. So Qui-Gon puts one more condition on his bet. If Anakin wins the race, Watto will have to free the boy and hand over the ship parts. Now the day of the race arrives, and that asshole Jabba the Hutt is also there as the damn guest of honor. As expected, Anakin wins the race and literally wrecks the competition. It's like Mario Kart in space. After that, Qui-Gon gets the ship parts, and the Jedi decides to take along Anakin so that the boy can be trained as a Jedi. Yeah, we all know how that turns out. Anakin says goodbye to his mother and C-3PO and moves ahead with Qui-Gon. However, before the gang can leave the desert planet, Darth Maul, Sidious's own apprentice, arrives on Tatooine to capture the Queen. Like his master, Darth Maul is a deadly Sith warrior who gives a tough fight to Qui-Gon. Fortunately though, the Jedi gang starts their ship and Qui-Gon jumps inside before it takes off. Basically, Qui-Gon leaves the duel with Darth Maul midway through. Oh, come on. Back on the ship, Padme speaks to Anakin, who is scared after leaving his home behind. However, Padme does her best to make the boy feel better. Honestly, it seems like Padme and Anakin have a rather beautiful bond. I'm sure we'll see more of it in the future. After arriving on Coruscant, Qui-Gon reports the Sith attack to the Jedi Council, which is basically the Jedi's governing body. The Council, which includes Yoda and another Master Jedi, Mace Windu, Nick Fury, is shocked because the Sith Order is believed to be extinct. After that, Qui-Gon asks the Council for permission to train Anakin as a Jedi. Qui-Gon also says that Anakin could very well be the chosen one from prophecy. So the Jedi Council agrees to give the young boy a chance, even though they aren't entirely sure about this. Meanwhile, Queen Amidala speaks with the Chancellor Valorum in front of the entire Republic committee. Senator Palpatine, Naboo's own representative, is also there to help out Amidala. Wait, where have I heard Palpatine's name before? Dude, it's the freaking Emperor! Palpatine tells Amidala that Chancellor Valorum won't take any action against the Federation because that greedy corporation owns just about everything. As expected, instead of taking direct action, Chancellor Valorum orders the committee to investigate whether the Federation is actually holding a blockade. You've got to be kidding me. At this point, Amidala is pissed, so she calls a vote of no confidence against Chancellor Valorum. Surprisingly, Senator Palpatine is one of the candidates to replace Valorum. Of course, that's how Palpatine became the Chancellor, just a step away from becoming the Emperor. Meanwhile, the Jedi Council speaks to Anakin alone and senses too much fear in the boy. The Council thinks that the boy has an unclear future, so they aren't gonna allow Qui-Gon to train Anakin. Oh no. On top of that, Qui-Gon already has an apprentice, Obi-Wan, so the Council can't have him get another one. However, Obi-Wan says that he's ready to face the Council's trial to officially become a Jedi Knight. Once that's done, Qui-Gon can take Anakin as his student. However, the Council says that for now, they must focus on the election of the new Chancellor. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are ordered to escort Amidala back to Naboo to investigate the Sith threat. On the ship, the Jedi make it pretty clear that the Federation will force her to sign the treaty as soon as she lands on Naboo. However, Amidala isn't ready to give up just yet and wants to fight the Federation. And for that, she asks Jar Jar Binks for his help to gather the support from Gungans. Jar Jar Binks now takes Amidala to speak with his clan, where Padme drops one heck of a news bomb on everyone. Shockingly, Padma is the real Queen Amidala, and the one wearing the costume all this while is just a decoy to protect her. Of course, Natalie Portman is no side character. Anywho, Amidala begs the Gungans for their help, and well, they agree. Now the battle begins. And my god, it's a tough one. In fact, the Federation kicks Gungans' asses with their droids. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan have a rematch against Darth Maul, who, by the way, uses a badass double-bladed lightsaber. Of course, Qui-Gon tries his best, but the jerk Darth Maul stabs Qui-Gon right in the stomach. Oh no. Of course, this pisses off Obi-Wan, and he keeps on fighting the Sith warrior head-on. Around this time, young Anakin accidentally pilots a starfighter that destroys the Federation's command ship from the inside. By doing this, Anakin shuts down every darn battle droid on the battlefield at once. Good job, future Vader. Now that the droids are nothing but a piece of junk, the Queen's forces storm the palace and capture Gunray. Speaking of good things, after a lone duel, Obi-Wan manages to overpower Darth Maul and cuts the Sith in half. Yeah, take that ugly face back to hell, Maul. Moving on, before dying, Qui-Gon asks Obi-Wan to train Anakin and insists he really is the chosen one. Yeah, dude, we know. Of course, Obi-Wan agrees before Qui-Gon takes his last breath, so he can go star in the Taken movie. Afterward, Yoda promotes Obi-Wan to full Jedi Knight and confirms the Council has approved Anakin as Obi-Wan's new apprentice. It's all coming full circle. Oh, also, we learn that Senator Palpatine has won the election and has become the new Chancellor. Of course he wins. Star Wars Episode II: Attack of the Clones picks up 10 years after the events on Naboo, when the Galactic Republic is falling apart. Apparently, a separatist movement made up of systems wanting to break away from the Republic is on the rise. And shockingly, this movement is led by someone mysterious named Count Dooku. Since things are getting out of hand, the Republic's legislative body, the Galactic Senate, wants to push the Military Creation Act to build an army for the Republic's defenses. Honestly, the Jedi forces are having some difficulty handling this by themselves, so creating an army to help them isn't a bad idea. Senator Padme Amidala, the former Queen of Naboo, plans to return and cast her vote on the Military Creation Act. However, as soon as Padme arrives on Coruscant, An assassination attempt kills her decoy, Corday. That's one heck of a welcome for the Queen. After this mess, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine assigns Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi and his apprentice Anakin Skywalker to protect her. Oh, by the way, Anakin is all grown up now and is a really fearsome and handsome warrior. Interestingly, Jar Jar Binks is also here, and he now serves as a junior representative for Naboo in the Galactic Senate. Later that night, a bounty hunter named Zam Wazell tries to kill Padme again by releasing poisonous leeches on her bed. Yikes! Fortunately though, the Jedi foil Zam's attempt and chase her through the city. Zam tries her best to run away, but the Jedi eventually corner her at the Outlander Club. Now, the Jedi wants to know who exactly is pulling the strings on Zam. However, before Zam can name her employer, a mysterious man who's wearing armor and has a jetpack kills her with a small poison dart and flees. Darn it! Now Obi-Wan is assigned to track down Padme's killer, while Anakin is told to escort Padme back home to Naboo for safety. Surprisingly, Anakin is too excited about this because he's frustrated with Obi-Wan's constant criticism and bickering. But most importantly, Anakin has started to develop some real feelings for Padme. I knew it! There was something between these two in the last movie. Anywho, Anakin now leaves with Padme, and of course our adorable R2-D2 tags along with the lovebirds. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan continues his investigation into the assassination, and his investigation leads him to a hidden planet called Kamino. Meanwhile, on Naboo, we learn that the Republic still hasn't done anything against the Federation after what they did 10 years back. To make things worse, that asshole Gunray is still leading the Federation. That's nuts! Moving on, Obi-Wan now arrives on Kamino where he meets Lama Su, the Prime Minister of the planet. Kamino looks good overall thanks to heavy CGI, but later Obi-Wan discovers that at Kamino, the Republic has secretly been growing a massive clone army. What the hell? Shockingly, the planet's leader tells Obi-Wan the order for the clone army was placed nearly 10 years ago. On top of that, the order was placed by Sifo-Dyas, a Jedi Master whom Obi-Wan thought was already dead. Dude, what the hell is going on? During all this, Anakin continues to build his love story with Padme and the two even share a kiss. Aww. Back on Kamino, Obi-Wan finally takes a look at the massive clone army.
Magnificent, aren't they?
Dude, this army is massive. And is that stormtrooper armor? After that, Obi-Wan learns that a bounty hunter was used as the clone army's genetic template, and this bounty hunter's name is Jango Fett. Wait, Fett? You mean like Boba Fett? Well, that sounds about right because the next moment, Obi-Wan meets Jango and his son, Boba. Oh, while speaking with Jango, Obi-Wan learns that a man named Tyrannus hired him for this job. At this point, Obi-Wan looks at Jango's armor and deduces that Jango must be the man who killed Zam. Get him! Back on Naboo, Padme tells Anakin that she can't be with him. Oh my god, why? Padme thinks that a Jedi and a senator aren't a good match. And while this breaks Anakin's heart, breaking the heart of Darth Vader? Not a good idea. Right after that, Obi-Wan contacts the Jedi Council and reveals everything about the clone army and Jango. At this time, we also learn that the Jedi are having difficulty using the Force. Basically, they're growing weak, but Master Yoda doesn't want to reveal this to the Senate because it would alert their enemies. Good idea. Meanwhile, on Naboo, Anakin confirms to Padme that he can see his mother and she's in pain. So he wants to leave to help her and, well, Padme wants to come along. Back on Kamino, Jango tries to flee with Boba now that Obi-Wan is onto him. But before he can escape, Obi-Wan finds him and starts fighting the armored bounty hunter. Unfortunately though, Jango ultimately gets the upper hand and knocks Obi-Wan into the ocean below. Believing that Obi-Wan is dead, Jango leaves Kamino with Boba. But guess what? Obi-Wan survives and secretly plants a tracking beacon on Jango's ship. Meanwhile, Anakin arrives on Tatooine along with Padme. There, Anakin meets his old owner Watto, who tells him his mother remarried a farmer named Klieg Lars. At the same time, Obi-Wan tracks Jango and Boba to the planet called Geonosis. Now Obi-Wan plans to observe Jango to find out who exactly is behind the clone army and, of course, Padme's assassination attempt. Back on Tatooine, Anakin arrives at her mother's farm where he meets C-3PO, who is as charming as ever. Then, Anakin meets his new stepbrother Owen and his girlfriend Beru. Anakin even meets Klieg Lars, his stepfather, who tells Anakin that his mother was kidnapped a month earlier by Tusken raiders. Oh damn, and you're just sitting here? Well, without wasting a moment, Anakin heads out alone to find his mother. Back at Geonosis, Obi-Wan spies on Jango and sees Count Dooku meeting with the Separatist leadership and learns they've built a massive new droid army. Not only that, but Obi-Wan also learns that Nute Gunray ordered Padme's assassination to avenge what happened 10 years earlier. Years have added up, but Gunray is still a nutjob. Back at Tatooine, Anakin finally tracks down his mother among some raiders' camp. But it's too late. She's already dying. In fact, the poor woman dies in Anakin's arms. Oh man. At this point, Anakin gets pissed. Really pissed. The poor boy gives into his hate and anger and slaughters the entire Tusken camp, women and children included. Holy mother of pearl, what just happened? Far away on Coruscant, Yoda senses a horrifying surge of darkness in the Force. So yeah, you can say that Anakin sort of gave in to the dark side of the Force. During all this, Obi-Wan realizes that he can't send the message directly to Coruscant because the range isn't that good. So he sends out the transmission of what he has learned through Anakin and Padme's ship. Anakin, on the other hand, brings his mother's body home for burial. Then, he confesses everything to Padme, including the fact that he killed women and children. After that, Anakin vows never to lose anyone he loves again. Even after that, Padme refuses to give up on her beloved Anakin. Later, Anakin and Padme get Obi-Wan's holographic message, where he reveals everything he has learned. Also, the message shows that Obi-Wan was captured by the droids. Damn it. Anakin sends the same message on to the Jedi Council. Now, Jedi Master Mace Windu decides to lead a strike team to Geonosis. Anakin and Padme head there too, planning their own rescue. Back on Coruscant, the Senate wonders if they should now lead the clone army against the droid army of Count Dooku. However, Palpatine needs the emergency powers to lead the clone army, and Palpatine wonders if the Senate would approve such a radical amendment. At this point, Jar Jar Binks is temporarily serving as Padme's representative, so he wonders if he should propose the amendment. Don't do it, Binks. Don't you freaking do it. It's all Palpatine's plan. On Geonosis, Dooku tries to recruit Obi-Wan to his cause, but Obi-Wan tells him to buzz off. We then learn that Dooku was once a Jedi Knight, and in fact, Qui-Gon was once Dooku's apprentice. What? He's Obi-Wan's Grandmaster? Dooku then reveals that he's doing all of this to defeat the Sith. Dooku tells Obi-Wan the entire Senate is being influenced by the Dark Lord Darth Sidious. Well, he ain't wrong, but of course, Obi-Wan doesn't believe Dooku one bit, for now. Meanwhile, Jar Jar grants emergency powers to Palpatine, who immediately announces plans to lead a massive army for the Republic. By now, Anakin and Padme have arrived on Geonosis, and they try their best to rescue Obi-Wan, but in the end, they get captured as well. Now all three are sentenced to execution in something called the Geonosis Arena, where they are forced to fight some ugly-ass monsters. But just then, Mace Windu arrives with a Jedi strike force, which leads to a full-blown CGI battle. At one point, Jango Fett jumps in to fight Windu directly, but Windu cuts off Jango's head clean after his jetpack malfunctions. Wait, doesn't Boba also die after his jetpack malfunctioned? They really should give up on those. Unfortunately, though, the Jedi start losing miserably against the droid army, because there are just a lot of them. Later, Yoda also arrives along with the, wait for it, clone army. Oh damn. By now though, only a handful of Jedi remain alive after this deadly fight. Regardless, with the clone army and the Jedi, the good guys absolutely cook Dooku's droids. And eventually, Gunray and Dooku decide to retreat. Before fleeing, Geonosis' leader, Poggle the Lesser, hands Dooku some sort of secret blueprints, which are actually the early plans for the Death Star.
It would have been much safer to put my master.
Holy sh**. Now, Obi-Wan and Anakin chase Dooku to a hidden hangar where Anakin rushes in alone and gets blasted by Dooku's Force Lightning, which knocks the guy out cold. Obi-Wan then tries to fight Dooku, but he gets defeated as well. However, before Dooku can kill Obi-Wan, Anakin wakes up and tries to block the strike. But at that very moment, Dooku slices off his right hand. Oh damn, he's really close to becoming Darth Vader now. Eventually, Dooku flees the battlefield and arrives on Coruscant to report to his true master, Darth Sidious. Dooku even gives Sidious the Death Star plans. It finally begins. Back at the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, and Yoda discuss if Sidious is secretly controlling the Senate, but Yoda says they can't jump to conclusions. Finally, we're on Naboo, where Anakin, who now has a mechanical hand, and Padme hold a secret wedding, with only C-3PO and R2-D2 as guests. Why secretly, you may ask? Well, it's pretty simple actually. Jedi are prohibited from getting attached to someone, let alone getting married. So yeah, keeping it a secret is the best bet for Anakin right now, or else he would get expelled from the Jedi Order. But hey, at least it's a happy ending. Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith picks up 3 years after the Battle of Geonosis, when the Clone Wars is in full swing across the galaxy. Apparently, the Separatist faction, now called the Confederacy of Independent Systems, is still being led by Count Dooku, and Dooku has brought the war straight to Coruscant. Oh man, what's worse is that the Separatist cyborg general, General Grievous, has just kidnapped Palpatine during a dead-ass space battle above the capital. So Obi-Wan and Anakin, who's now a full Jedi Knight, lead a rescue mission and fight through the massive Separatist fleet to get Palpatine back. After some shooting and badass moments, Obi-Wan and Anakin crash land on Grievous's ship called the Invisible Hand. How much time do you think they spend coming up with ship names? Anywho, Obi-Wan and Anakin slice through a heck of a lot of droids to reach the top, where apparently Palpatine is being held. But before these two can rescue the Chancellor, Count Dooku confronts them and starts to fight the two Jedi single-handedly. It's a tough fight, of course. And at one point, Dooku knocks Obi-Wan out cold. Now Anakin has no choice but to fight this douchebag alone, and cuts off Dooku's hands. Sheesh, slow down, Vader. Of course, Palpatine is watching all this and he's over the moon that Anakin is embracing the dark side. And to give Anakin one final push, Palpatine asks Anakin to kill the defenseless Dooku. At first, Anakin hesitates a little bit, but he ultimately kills the jerk. Anakin, can't you see you're being manipulated? Moving on, the ship Anakin and Obi-Wan is on gets damaged and starts crashing toward Coruscant. So Anakin carries the unconscious Obi-Wan through the wreckage and starts to move ahead. Obi-Wan regains consciousness, so the odds are looking in their favor. But then, the duo, along with Palpatine, gets captured by Grievous, who by the way looks a lot like Ultron from the Avengers movie. Anywho, Grievous takes away the Jedi's lightsabers. However, before Grievous can do anything, the adorable R2-D2 pulls back the lightsabers and helps the Jedi break free. Now, Obi-Wan and Anakin fight off some very badass droid bodyguards. During all this though, Grievous flees from the already falling ship. Obi-Wan and Anakin, on the other hand, manage to crash land the ship safely on a Coruscant landing platform. Man, that was close. Back on the ground, Anakin is hailed as a freaking hero, and after getting all the cheers, Anakin secretly meets his wife Padme and learns that she's pregnant. My god, that's Luke and Leia on their way. Meanwhile, Grievous regroups with the remaining Separatist leadership on the planet Utapau. There, the true mastermind behind all this, Darth Sidious, tells Grievous to move the Separatist Council to the volcanic planet Mustafar. Sidious tells Grievous that the war is almost over, and after Dooku's death, he already has a new and more powerful apprentice in mind. I know what's going to happen, but I still hope it doesn't. Elsewhere, Anakin starts having some really bad nightmares, in which he sees Padme dying in childbirth. Uh-oh. Around the same time, Palpatine gives Anakin a seat on the Jedi Council as his personal representative. It's a good political move to get on Anakin's good side. However, while the Jedi accept him onto the council, they refuse to grant him the rank of Master. Apparently, Master is above the usual Jedi Knight rank, and everyone else on the Jedi Council is a Master. But for some reason, the Council doesn't trust Anakin to have this rank. Well, that obviously pisses off Anakin. Apparently, the Council doesn't like the fact that Anakin is close to the Chancellor. They just don't trust the guy. To make things worse, Obi-Wan tells Anakin that the Council wants him to spy on Palpatine. Of course, Anakin doesn't like this one bit because he's blinded by Palpatine's manipulation. Now, he must choose between Palpatine and the Jedi. That's quite a dilemma. Later, we arrive at an opera house where suddenly Palpatine reveals Grievous's location to Anakin. So Grievous is the sacrificial lamb, eh? Then, once Palpatine is alone with Anakin, he openly seduces Anakin to the dark side. The old geezer tells Anakin that the Jedi and Sith aren't so different after all. Yeah, right, like light and dark are no different, manipulative jerk. Palpatine then tells Anakin the legend of a Sith Lord, Darth Plagueis the Wise, who supposedly mastered the power to stop death itself. Well, that looks like the final nail in the coffin. That's because Anakin is seeing visions of Padme's death, so he desperately needs such power to save his wife. Oh, also, Plagueis' apprentice killed him in his sleep, so the dude could save someone from death but couldn't save himself. Anywho, now that the Jedi Council has the location of Grievous, they decide to launch an attack. The Council decides that someone experienced needs to take down Grievous. As expected, they chose Obi-Wan instead of Anakin. Way to piss off the guy even more. Before leaving though, Obi-Wan and Anakin share a heartfelt goodbye. Obi-Wan even tells Anakin that he's proud of him and considers him the better Jedi. Aww. On Utapau, Obi-Wan finally tracks down Grievous while he's preparing to leave for Mustafar with the Separatist Council.
Hello there.
Grievous gives a tough fight to Obi-Wan, especially because this skinny Ultron has 4 freaking hands. On top of that, Grievous learns some Jedi moves from Count Dooku, so he holds a lightsaber in each hand. Back on Coruscant, Palpatine makes his final move to turn Anakin to the dark side, and reveals that he knows Padme is Anakin's wife. Not only that, but Palpatine knows that Padme will die during childbirth and Anakin wants to save her. After that, Palpatine finally reveals the truth to Anakin, that he is Darth Sidious himself. Obviously, Anakin is stunned, and he nearly kills the old dude on the spot. But he eventually decides to expose Palpatine to the Jedi Council instead. There's still a chance! Who am I fooling? Meanwhile, on Utapau, Obi-Wan eventually overpowers Grievous and shoots his exposed organs, killing him for good. Now go join Ultron in robotic hell. Elsewhere, as promised, Anakin reports everything to Jedi Master Mace Windu, who immediately leads a strike team to arrest Palpatine. Sidious, however, is all prepared to fight back. In fact, this jerk ambushes and kills 3 of the 4 Jedi Masters in his office, leaving only Windu to fight against him. During the duel, Windu gains the upper hand and disarms Sidious. But right then, Sidious unleashes a desperate burst of Force lightning. Windu, being the badass he is, deflects the strike back at Sidious, which permanently disfigures Palpatine's face. Now, this dude looks pale and twisted. Basically, he looks like the Emperor we all know. After this, Windu prepares to land a final strike on Sidious. However, Anakin, who's watching all this, finally decides that anything would be worth it if he could save Padme. Aw man. Then, Anakin betrays Windu and cuts off one of his arms. After that, Sidious blasts poor Windu out the window, straight to his death. Man, I am heartbroken at this point. Anakin, who's also heartbroken, promises to stay loyal to Sidious in exchange for the power to save Padme. In that moment, Sidious renames Anakin to Darth Vader and orders him to wipe out the Jedi. Dude, come on. You don't have to do that. Now, Vader leads an army of clone soldiers into the Jedi Temple and slaughters everyone, including the young Jedi trainees hiding in the council chamber. Dude, what the hell? At the same moment, Sidious broadcasts a galaxy-wide order to every clone army, which is called Order 66. Basically, Sidious commands the clone army to execute their Jedi generals. Well, across the galaxy, the clone army guns down every poor Jedi without even thinking twice. Poor Obi-Wan also gets shocked by what's happening, and he barely survives on Utapau. Meanwhile, Yoda is on the planet of the Wookiees, Kashyyyk. Yes, our very own Chewie is also there with Yoda. Apparently, Yoda was on Kashyyyk to defend the land of the Wookiees against the Separatists. However, the clone army on Kashyyyk also turns against Yoda, but he manages to escape with Chewie's help. Damn. Bail Organa, one of the senators, witnesses the massacre and flees Coruscant on his ship, hoping to find any surviving Jedi. After all that, Vader, meets Padme and lies to her that the Jedi have tried to overthrow the Republic. Then, Vader tells Padme that he's going to Mustafar to end the war by wiping out the Separatists. My god, stop with the lies, man. At the same time, Obi-Wan and Yoda are rescued by Organa, and they decide to alter the message from the emergency beacon at the Jedi Temple. Apparently, a message has been relayed from the temple to all Jedi that the war is over, so they must return home. But of course, Obi-Wan and Yoda know it's a trap, so so they want to alert the surviving Jedi as soon as they can. Back on Coruscant, Palpatine speaks to the Senate and falsely claims the Jedi tried to overthrow the government, while Vader slaughters the Separatist Council on Mustafar. Palpatine announces that the Republic will be reorganized as the first galactic empire. Padme is there as well, and while she can't do anything, the poor woman is horrified. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and Yoda arrive at the now destroyed Jedi Temple, where they see footage of Anakin killing God knows how many Jedi. Obi-Wan and Yoda now realize that Anakin has become Darth Vader and has chosen the dark side.
It can't be.
Yeah, it's truly shocking. Now, Yoda decides to face Sidious while he asks Obi-Wan to deal with Vader. Obi-Wan now meets Padme and tells her what Anakin has done. Of course, Padme is shaken to her core, but she still refuses to give away Anakin's location. At the same time, Obi-Wan realizes that Padme is pregnant, and thanks to his connection to the Force, he deduces that Anakin is the father. Surprisingly, this sort of confirms that deep inside, Obi-Wan always knew about Padme and Anakin's relationship. Anywho, after Obi-Wan leaves, Padme, along with C-3PO, secretly travels to Mustafar to find Anakin. What Padme doesn't realize is that Obi-Wan secretly entered her ship. After reaching Mustafar, Padme literally begs Vader to abandon the dark side and run away with her. However, Anakin is just too far gone at this point. Dude even suggests to Padme that they should overthrow Palpatine and rule the galaxy together. Oh god. What the hell happened to you, man? At this point, Obi-Wan reveals himself and Vader assumes that Padme betrayed him. So Vader begins force choking poor Padme until she passes out. Holy crap, this pisses off Obi-Wan, and he eventually starts to fight Anakin. Meanwhile, back on Coruscant, Yoda confronts Sidious directly in his office. As expected, the two start fighting and they are equally powerful. In fact, the legendary fight between these two ends in a stalemate. It also means that Yoda can't defeat Sidious right now, so he escapes with Organa's help. Cut to Mustafar, the duel between Obi-Wan and Vader just goes on and on. Eventually, these two start fighting very close to the lava. At this point, Obi-Wan tells Vader to surrender, but Vader says nah and charges at Obi-Wan. Right then, Obi-Wan cuts both of Vader's legs using his lightsaber. Oh my god. It's even hard to look at. Vader can't do anything now, and Obi-Wan also cries, saying that Anakin was like his brother. Then, since Vader is lying really close to the lava, his entire body catches fire. However, Obi-Wan just can't bring himself to finish him off, so he just walks away and takes Anakin's lightsaber with him. Okay, so that's how Vader's body got damaged. Dude's body literally caught on fire. Now, Obi-Wan leaves on his ship with an unconscious Padme on board. As soon as he leaves, Sidious arrives and realizes that Vader is still alive, so he rescues him. Then, Padme tragically dies right after delivering the babies and naming them Luke and Leia. Damn. Meanwhile, Sidious saves Vader by building him mechanical limbs and the iconic black suit and mask. Vader is conscious the entire time, and Sidious lies to Vader that he killed Padme himself in his rage. At this point, Vader is so broken that he fully gives in to the dark side. There it is, the birth of Darth Vader. Meanwhile, Organa, Yoda, and Obi-Wan decide that the twins must be separated and hidden to protect them from the Sith. At the same time, Yoda tells Obi-Wan that Qui-Gon has learned the path to immortality, and he has returned to the Force. Basically, he became a spirit, and Yoda wants to teach Obi-Wan how to do that as well. Okay. So that's how Obi-Wan became one with the Force after getting killed by Darth Vader. Moving on, Leia is adopted by Organa and his wife on Alderaan, so she becomes Princess Leia. Also, before leaving for home, Organa asks his men to wipe the memory of C-3PO and R2-D2. Yeah, that's why they couldn't remember anything in the 4th episode. Luke, on the other hand, will now live with his father's stepbrother Owen and his wife Beru. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan chooses to go into exile himself and watch over Luke, but from a distance. Finally, we see Vader, Palpatine, and Governor Tarkin, the asshole from the first movie, overseeing construction of the first Death Star. Man, That was one heck of a ride, but hey, it isn't over yet. Alright, it's time to take a little break from the live action and venture into the animated world of Star Wars with Clone Wars. Basically, the Clone Wars take us back to the time when Count Dooku's army was giving a lot of trouble to the Republic's clone army. The Separatist movement was on the rise, and Vader was still Anakin. Around this time, the Separatists have control of most of the major hyperspace travel routes. All this mess leaves Republic forces scattered and cut off across the Outer Rim, which is basically the galaxy's lawless border region. To make things worse, a strange octopus-like ship heads towards Tatooine to kidnap Rada, the infant son of crime lord Jabba the Hutt. Uh-oh, someone is messing with legendary crime lord Jabba. After that, Jabba contacts Palpatine and asks for his help to get his son back. Of course, Mace Windu doesn't like the idea of helping a thug like Jabba, but Palpatine says Jabba controls the Outer Rim, and they need to use the Outer Rim ports to move the clone army. Basically, they have no choice but to help Jabba. Then, Mace Windu and Yoda decide to send Anakin and Obi-Wan to find Rada. Speaking of Anakin and Obi-Wan, they're currently in the middle of the war against the Separatist droid forces. In the middle of the battle, we also meet Captain Rex, a loyal clone trooper in the service of Anakin and Obi-Wan. Then suddenly, a young Jedi trainee named Ahsoka Tano arrives on the battlefield to tell the duo that they must return to the Jedi Temple right now. But what's truly surprising is that Yoda sent Ahsoka to be Anakin's Padawan. That's an exciting turn of events. Of course, Anakin isn't ready to have a trainee, but hey, you can't say no to Master Yoda. Also, Ahsoka is a total badass, and she helps Anakin and Obi-Wan win the battle. Basically, she sneaks behind enemy lines to take down their defensive shield. Well, this ultimately helps the Republic secure a win. Once all that's over, Yoda arrives to tell Obi-Wan and Anakin about their mission to rescue Rhoda. Now it's up to Anakin, Ahsoka, Rex, and the clones to rescue the alien boy. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan heads to Tatooine alone to reassure Jabba that they will get his son back. In exchange, Jabba agrees to allow the Republic to use the Hutt's trading routes. Now Anakin, Ahsoka, Rex, and a heck of a lot of clones arrive on the jungle planet Teth, where apparently Rhoda is being held. Well, it doesn't take long for the gang to find Rhoda, but unfortunately he's sick. And to make things worse, it's a trap. Shockingly, Count Dooku orchestrated the entire kidnapping to frame the Jedi and turn the Hutts against the Republic. The dude even meets Jabba and tells him that it was the Jedi who kidnapped Rhoda. Cheeky bastard. Anywho, Dooku's enforcer, the deadly Asajj Ventress, records a video of Anakin and Ahsoka with Rhoda, so Dooku can send this to Jabba. After that, Dooku orders Ventress to recapture Rhoda since the Jedi has already taken the bait. Yeah, that's not good. All the while, Anakin is just pissed that Yoda made Ahsoka his Padawan, so he just keeps on bickering with Ahsoka. But despite all that, Anakin and Ahsoka manage to escape with Rhoda and R2-D2, while Rex and the clone army hold off Ventress's forces. Anakin and Ahsoka even hijack an old transport ship to reach Tatooine. They are one heck of a team. Also, Ahsoka treats Rhoda's illness along the way because it's risky to deliver a sick Rhoda to Jabba. Meanwhile, after getting the tip from Anakin, Obi-Wan arrives just in time to help Rex's exhausted troops on Teth. Then, Obi-Wan duels Ventress himself, and while it takes some effort, he eventually defeats her. Unfortunately though, Ventress escapes before Obi-Wan can capture her. Back on Tatooine, Dooku lies to Jabba that Anakin has killed his son Rhoda. So yeah, Jabba is really pissed at the Jedi right now. While flying above Tatooine, Anakin and Ahsoka's ship gets ambushed by Dooku's robotic Magna Guards, and they get shot down. Darn it. Back on Coruscant, Padme hears about Anakin's dangerous mission and gets worried. Aww. She decides to reach out to Jabba's uncle, Zero the Hutt, to ask for his help. Conveniently, Zero is currently on Coruscant, so it doesn't take long for Padme to find him. Shockingly though, Zero refuses to cooperate. Oh no, why? Well, Padme spies on Zero and discovers that he has been secretly working with Dooku.
Don't worry, I have convinced Jabba that the Jedi have murdered his son and are on their way to kill him.
Jabba will slay the Jedi on sight.
the Hutts have a traitor in the mix. Apparently, Zero wants to get rid of Jabba, his own nephew, so he can take control of the Hutt clan. At this point, Padme gets caught snooping and is captured by Zero. Uh-oh. Meanwhile, Anakin and Ahsoka are stranded in the desert somewhere on Tatooine. To make it worse, the enemies are closing in on them. Right then, Anakin pulls off a clever trick. Basically, he fills rocks in the pack in which he is supposedly carrying Rhoda. So when Dooku captures Anakin, he finds nothing but a pile of rocks instead of Rhoda. Speaking of Rhoda, he's currently with Ahsoka and R2, who are on their way to Jabba's palace. Now, while Anakin has a cool lightsaber battle with Dooku, Ahsoka and R2 almost make it to Jabba's palace, but 3 powerful droids corner poor Ahsoka. By this point, Anakin has defeated Dooku, and instead of killing the guy, Anakin races to help Ahsoka. Back on Coruscant, Padme manages to call for help from her cell through C-3PO. And well, it doesn't take long for Zero to get arrested by Coruscant's security forces. Meanwhile, Ahsoka defeats the droids single-handedly and finally enters Jabba's palace. Anakin is there as well, so they are finally reunited. After a long ride, Anakin and Ahsoka safely hand over Rhoda to Jabba. But even then, Jabba orders his minions to kill the 2 Jedi. Are you freaking serious right now? Apparently, Jabba still believes that it was the Jedi who kidnapped his son, so they could manipulate him into opening his trade routes. But right then, Padme contacts Jabba and tells him about Zero's betrayal, and that Dooku is behind everything. So well, Jabba allows Anakin and Ahsoka to leave safely. Not only that, but Jabba allows the Republic to use his trade routes for the clone army. Jabba sorta came around in the end, but we all know he'll stay an asshole for a few more years. The beginning of the next official trilogy, Star Wars The Force Awakens, kicks off about 30 years after Luke blew up the second Death Star. But after that, Luke, the last known Jedi, just vanished. To make things worse for the galaxy, the First Order, which is basically the Empire's spiritual successor, has been creating a lot of problems. As expected, the First Order wants to hunt down Luke, and they won't rest until they kill the last Jedi. At the same time, we have a new military group known as the Resistance, which is backed up by the New Republic, or whatever remains of it. What's interesting is that the Resistance is being led by none other than Leia Organa, who's a general now. And naturally, Leia is looking for her lost brother as well. Man, I am so excited to see Luke and Leia again. Anywho, we start off by meeting Poe Dameron, Leia's best pilot, who's on a secret mission on the desert planet Jakku. On Leia's orders, Poe meets an old man named Lor San Tekka, who, interestingly, has a map that could lead them to Luke. Fortunately, Poe gets the map from Tekka, but their meeting gets interrupted by the First Order stormtroopers. Damn it. Obviously, this is no time to be a hero, and the map is just too darn precious to lose, so Poe tries to escape with his droid BB-8. Unfortunately, Poe's ship gets damaged by the stormtroopers. Well, this puts Poe in quite a pickle, so he sends BB-8 off with the map and stays behind to cover the droid. Man, we need droids like R2-D2 and BB-8 in real life. They are too reliable. Moving on, we meet a stormtrooper known only by his number, FN-2187. During the fight, FN-2187 watches his squadmate die brutally right in front of him, which shakes the poor guy badly. Meanwhile, stormtroopers capture Tekka and bring him in front of Kylo Ren, a mysterious masked warrior of the First Order. As expected, Ren wants the map from the old guy who, by the way, knows exactly who Ren is and where he comes from. But before we can learn that, Ren kills Tekka right on the spot. Dude, you could have talked it out. Right then, Poe takes a shot at Ren. But guess what? Ren freezes the blaster bolt in midair with the Force and has Poe captured. Man, Ren is terrifying. Before leaving with Poe, Ren orders the stormtroopers to destroy the entire village and massacre everyone. Naturally, stormtroopers do just that, except for FN-2187, who is just too darn horrified to even fire his weapon. Interesting. I can't wait to see who's beneath that mask. What's truly terrifying is that Ren notices FN-2187 not firing his weapon. Uh-oh. But Ren doesn't do anything to FN-2187, who just boards the First Order's massive warship, the Finalizer. Once inside the ship, ship, FN-2187 takes off his helmet, and we can see that the guy is scared to his bones. Right then, we meet Captain Phasma, yet another masked warrior and Ren's second in command. Captain Phasma confronts FN-2187 and tells him to turn in his weapon for inspection. By now, FN-2187 is sure that he's about to be punished. Elsewhere on Jakku, we meet a scavenger named Rey, who is recovering parts from old wrecked ships. Why? It's simple. Rey wants to trade the parts for food in the local settlement, Nima Outpost, which is run by a junk dealer named Unkar Plutt. Later that night, Rey stumbles upon BB-8 being harassed by a local scavenger. Since Rey is actually a good person, she frees the droid from the scavengers. Now the droid starts to like Rey, so it begins following her around. Aww. Meanwhile, on the Finalizer ship, Kylo Ren uses the Force to dig through Poe's mind and learns the map is hidden inside BB-8. Back on the desert planet, Plutt tries to buy BB-8 from Rey, but of course, Rey says nah. So the douchebag Plutt sends his thugs after the droid instead. Jerk. Next, we see FN-2187, who really doesn't want to get killed at the hands of Ren or Phasma, so he decides to flee before it's too darn late. Surprisingly, FN-2187 also frees Poe from his cell because he thinks it's the right thing to do. Nice. Poe confirms that he can fly a fighter plane, so the two steal a TIE fighter to get the hell out of there. During their escape, Poe asks for FN-2187's name. Well, the poor trooper was never given a real name, so Poe comes up with one on the spot. Finn. Moving on, just as Poe and Finn are getting away, the enemy starts firing at them, and sadly, one of the hits lands and Poe and Finn's plane crashes towards Jakku. Aw man. Fortunately though, Finn ejects from the plane and actually survives. However, he doesn't find Poe anywhere. Instead, he looks at a crashed plane. What's worse is that the plane gets buried in the sand almost immediately. Sheesh. So Finn assumes Poe died in the crash. However, Finn managed to save Poe's cool jacket at least, which he takes along with him. Now, Finn continues to wander in the desert for a long time, but he eventually runs into Rey, who, by the way, is defending BB-8 from thieves. Yeah, they are probably the thugs sent by Plutt. Right then, BB-8 detects Finn because the dude is wearing Poe's jacket, the droid's master. Finn then helps Rey and the droid catch up on everything, including the fact that Poe died. Finn also tells Rey that the droid has a map that leads to Luke. This surprises Rey because Luke is considered a myth. At this point, Finn lies to Rey that he's with the Resistance and he eventually teams up with her. Unfortunately for them though, the First Order tracks them down and launches an airstrike. An airstrike? Isn't that a little bit of overkill? Finn and Rey see no way out, but they stumble upon an old-ass ship just sitting nearby. Dude, it's the legendary Millennium Falcon. Anywho, Finn and Rey board the Falcon and manage to blast their way to safety and into space. Naturally, Finn and Rey are over the moon that they escaped, but the next moment, the Falcon breaks down. Also, a tractor beam pulls the Falcon into a ship that belongs to, wait for it, Han Solo and his Wookiee partner Chewie. My god, the legends are back. Once inside Han's new ship called Eravana, Finn and Rey tell Han and Chewie about the map inside BB-8, so obviously Han agrees to help.
Yeah, I know him. I knew Luke.
Dude, goosebumps. Unfortunately, two rival gangs board Han's ship the next moment because Han owes them money. Of course. Instantly, Han hides Rey and Finn while he tries to negotiate with the thugs. During the conversation though, the gangs realize that there's a huge bounty on BB-8, so yeah, things get chaotic really quickly. And in the chaos, Rey accidentally releases a trio of Rathtars, who are like really massive monstrous creatures. As it turns out, Han was holding these Rathtars on his ship to sell them to someone. Regardless, the monsters are on the loose and the gangs are distracted, so it gives Han's group enough time to jump to lightspeed in the Falcon. However, one of the gang leaders informs the First Order that the droid is with Han Solo and on the Millennium Falcon. Elsewhere, we see the First Order's massive planet-sized superweapon, Starkiller Base. So, it's a modern version of the Death Star. Ren is there with General Hux, one of the First Order's officers, to meet their mysterious leader, Supreme Leader Snoke. Snoke, who appears as a giant-ass hologram, is pissed because they lost the map and he thinks Luke's return will form a new Jedi Order. Now Hux suggests that they use Starkiller to wipe out the New Republic entirely, and Snoke sees no problem with the plan. At this point, we also learn that Han Solo is, wait for it, Ren's father. What the actual hell? So Ren is Leia's son? Snoke reveals that Han is on the same ship as the droid. However, Ren confirms he no longer cares about his father. Dude, what happened? Back on the Falcon, Han finally reveals what happened to Luke. Apparently, after Luke tried rebuilding the Jedi Order, one of his own students turned to the dark side. Then that student destroyed everything Luke built and even killed the other trainees. It's the Darth Vader situation all over again, and Luke is the new Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anywho, Luke started to blame himself for everything and disappeared. Han also confirms that Luke is probably searching for the very first Jedi Temple. Moving on from the heartbreaking backstory, Han now takes the group to the planet Takodana to meet Maz Kanata, his old friend. Han trusts Maz and wants to get a new ship from her, one the First Order can't track. What the group doesn't realize is that spies for both the Resistance and the First Order spot them arriving on the planet. Uh-oh. Meanwhile, we see Ren hanging out in his private chambers, kneeling before the burnt helmet of his grandfather, Darth Vader, the helmet of a legend. Anywho, Ren reveals that he feels the pull toward the light again and begs Vader to help him stay on the dark side. But why, dude? Light side is so much better. Now we are at Maz's castle, where Finn decides he wants out. Basically, he plans to flee with some smugglers rather than face the First Order. Finn also admits to Rey that he is not with the Resistance. He's just a stormtrooper, deserter, trying to survive. Come on, dude. This is no time to back down. After Finn steps away, Rey hears some strange cries calling to her, and she follows them to a hidden chamber. Inside, Rey discovers an old lightsaber, the very same one that belonged to Anakin Skywalker and later Luke. Rey touches the lightsaber, which shockingly gives Rey a flood of visions, a burning Jedi temple, and herself as a frightened child being left behind on Jakku. Then Rey sees a really scary future in which she is hunted by Ren. Of course, poor Rey is shaken and doesn't understand what is happening. However, Maz arrives and reveals that the Force is strong with Rey, and Luke's lightsaber is calling to her. What the hell does that mean? However, Rey isn't interested in all that. Instead, she wants to go back to Jakku because Rey still hopes that the person who left her there will come back someday. After this, Rey simply runs out and flees into the forest. Meanwhile, back at Starkiller Base, General Hux finally fires the Starkiller at the Hosnian system, home to the New Republic's capital and most of its fleet. As advertised, the dead-ass weapon annihilates everything, multiple planets, in an instant. The destruction is so massive that it is even visible from Takodana. Finn sees everything from Takodana and gets shaken. At that moment, Finn starts to wonder if he should really run away from the fight. Eventually, he decides to join Rey and the rest of his newly made friends. After that, the First Order arrives at Takodana itself and attacks Maz's castle. In the chaos, Maz hands Luke's lightsaber to Finn and asks him to keep it safe. And guess what? Finn uses the same lightsaber to fight off a stormtrooper. However, Finn's former squad mate, FN-2199, quickly overpowers Finn. Before things can get any worse for Finn, Han arrives and saves the poor guy. The happiness doesn't last for long though, as Han and Chewie get captured along with Finn. Oh, come on. But right freaking then, we see that Poe is actually alive. That's what I'm talking about. In fact, Poe arrives with a squadron of Resistance fighters to turn the tables on the First Order's cocky soldiers. Now we cut to Rey, who's in the forest where Ren confronts her and easily overpowers the poor girl with the Force. Ren also discovers Rey has already seen the map he's after all this time. Basically, Rey has everything that Ren needs to track down Luke, so he withdraws from the First Order and takes the unconscious Rey with him. At the same time, Han, who by the way knows that Ren is his son, watches Ren carrying Rey with him. Anywho, the Resistance manages to free Finn, Han, and Chewie at last. Right then, Han reunites with C-3PO and Leia. Oh my. Finally, They are reunited. Han then tells Leia that he saw their son, who desperately needs some scolding for being a bad boy. Next, we arrive at the Resistance base on the planet Dakar. Now, the Resistance recovers the map from the droid, which unfortunately is incomplete. You've got to be kidding me. There's a chance that another droid, R2-D2, might have the remaining portion of the map. Sadly though, R2 has been shut down since Luke's disappearance. Oh no. One good thing happens though. Since Finn worked on Starkiller, he might know some weaknesses of the planet-sized weapon. At this point, we also learn that it was Ren who was Luke's student that turned to the dark side. In fact, this whole thing drove Leia and Han apart, with Han returning to smuggling and Leia leading the Resistance. Meanwhile, we see Ren using the Force to extract the map from Rey's mind. But guess what? The mind reading doesn't work on Rey. Instead, Rey unintentionally looks inside Ren's mind and learns that he wants to become as strong as Darth Vader. She pulled an Uno reverse card on him. After Ren leaves, Rey realizes Maz was right about her abilities, so Rey decides to give this a shot and uses a Jedi mind trick to convince her guard to free her. Then, she escapes the room Ren was holding her in, which really pisses off Ren. Back to the Resistance, everyone is worried because the Starkiller might very well be targeting Dakar any moment now. However, Finn gives Leia the rough blueprints for Starkiller, so the Resistance comes up with a plan. Interestingly, they learn the weapon's weak point, which is a critical component called the thermal oscillator. If the Resistance manages to destroy this part, it would cause the whole planet to explode. Now Finn, Han, and Chewie volunteer to sneak in and disable the base's shields from within. Once that's done, the Resistance fighters can strike the weak point directly. Before they leave, Leia begs Han to bring their son home if he can. He will, don't worry Leia. Now, while Rey keeps on hiding from Ren and his minions, Han, Chewie, and Finn arrive on Starkiller base. The trio very easily sneaks inside the base and they capture Captain Phasma. They put Phasma at gunpoint and force her to lower the shields. After that, they decide to throw Phasma into the trash compactor, which will crush her like trash. Now the trio moves ahead, and it doesn't take them long to find Rey. Immediately after seeing her friends, Rey hugs Finn. Aww. Meanwhile, since the shields are down, the Resistance fighters, led by Poe, start shooting at the weapon's weak point. To make things worse for the First Order, Han's gang plants explosives deep inside the base. Good call. By this time though, Ren senses his father and heads out to confront Han. Seeing his son standing in front of him, Han gets emotional and asks him to come back. At this point, we learn that Ren's real name is Ben. For a bit, it looks like Ben is actually ready to give up on the dark side. But the next moment, he stabs Han right in his chest. No, what have you done, Ben? Sadly, Han dies right in front of Chewie, Rey, and Finn. Leia, who's far away on Dakar, feels Han's death through the Force. Man, that's so sad. At this point, Chewie, Rey, and Finn get pissed off and they start to fight Ren. They even injure the wannabe Darth Vader. During the fight, Rey decides to use the Force to grab Luke's lightsaber, which fell from Finn's hands. Meanwhile, Poe successfully fires at Starkiller's weapon and the entire planet begins tearing itself apart from the inside. Since Finn and Chewie are injured in the fight, Rey fights Ben head on. After all that has happened, Rey fully accepts the Force within her and uses her power to injure Ren's face. However, before she can land the final strike, the base collapses around them. Come on, not right now. Rey finds an unconscious Finn while Chewie arrives with the Falcon to rescue them. Meanwhile, Snoke orders Hux to save Ren and retreat so he can finish the boys' training. Finally, the Starkiller base meets the same fate as the Death Star as it is blasted into pieces. Back at Dakar, everyone, especially Leia, is heartbroken after Han's death. Then R2-D2 suddenly wakes up and reveals that he does have the missing piece of map. Next, Leia and everyone else use the map and learn that Luke is on the remote ocean planet called Ahch-To, which is home to the very first Jedi Temple. Time to find the legend, guys. As expected, Rey, along with Chewie and R2-D2, decides to head out and find Luke. Well, she does exactly that after arriving on Ahch-To. And we finally see freaking Luke Skywalker. Alright, so Rogue One is a prequel story that is set before the events of the very first Star Wars movie. So yeah, it takes place between the original trilogy and the prequels when the Death Star wasn't even fully built yet. and before we met Luke Skywalker. Moving on to the film, we arrive 6 years after the Galactic Empire rises to power. We see an Imperial officer named Director Orson Krennic land on the planet Lamu. He's with a squad of elite soldiers known as Death Troopers. They're basically stormtroopers but with black armor, and yeah, they are way more deadly. Anywho, Krennic is here to forcibly recruit a scientist named Galen Erso to finish his work on the Death Star. Galen's wife Lyra tries to stop Galen from leaving, but the Death Troopers kill her right on the spot. Galen's young daughter, Jyn, is also there, and the poor girl escapes and goes into hiding. Eventually, Saw Gerrera, the ruthless leader of the rebellion group called Partisans, rescues Jyn. Now we jump 13 years later, when Jyn has grown into an adult and is using a fake identity. However, she's currently sitting in an Imperial prison on the planet Wobani. Elsewhere, we meet a rebel spy named Cassian Andor, who learns from an informant that the Empire is building a planet-destroying weapon. Yeah, that's the Death Star. Andor also learns that an Imperial cargo ship has defected and is spreading information about the Death Star. Not only that, but the Empire has been using rare crystals from the moon Jedha to build the weapon. That's brand new information. Finally, Andor learns from the informant that the pilot defector was sent by Galen Erso himself. Then, we meet the defector pilot, Bodhi Rook, who tracks down Saw Gerrera on Jedha to deliver a secret and urgent message from Galen. However, Gerrera's guys don't trust Bodhi, so they cover his face before taking the guy to Gerrera. Elsewhere, we see Jyn being taken somewhere by the stormtroopers, maybe a prison transfer. But on their way, the rebellion attacks the vehicle and frees Jyn. Right after that, Jyn meets the rebellion leadership, which includes Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and General Davits Draven. At this point, we also learn that Jyn is a petty criminal who got caught for some document forgery. It seems like fate that Jyn just fell into their lap like this, and the rebellion wants Jin's help to reach Gerrera, who for some reason separated from the rebellion and went solo. The rebellion thinks that Jyn had a connection with Gerrera because he raised her for a while. Years later though, Gerrera abandoned Jyn because he didn't want the girl to become a target of the Empire. Damn, that's so sad. Anywho, the rebellion thinks they can still use Jyn to get to Gerrera. So Andor, Jyn, and the reprogrammed Imperial droid K2SO head to Jedha for this mission. Cut to Jedha. Gerrera gets the message from Bodhi, which is in some sort of chip. However, Gerrera doesn't trust Bodhi, so he asks his men to use the mind-reading creature called Bor Gullet on the guy to see if he's for real. Meanwhile, on an Imperial Star Destroyer, we see Governor Tarkin. Yeah, that's the same guy who was with Darth Vader in A New Hope. Anywho, Tarkin confronts Krennic about the security leak. Tarkin also tells Krennic his time running the Death Star project is over. Then, Tarkin suggests testing the weapon on the rebellion, or maybe on Jedha to see if it's actually ready. Oh no. Moving on from that, after reaching Jedha, Jyn and Andor get caught up in a fight between the Gerrera's rebels and the stormtroopers. But right then, a blind warrior named Chiru Imwe and his partner, Baze Malbus, save them. Interestingly, Chiru and Baze are also guardians of a sacred Jedi temple the Empire's been looting. Later, Jin's group is captured by Gerrera's men, who take her to the big man Gerrera. Now, Gerrera and Jyn are reunited after years, and Jyn is clearly pissed at Gerrera for abandoning her. Regardless, Gerrera privately shows the girl something important. A holographic message from her father. Yeah, that's the message he received from Bodhi. In the message, Galen confesses that the cocky Emperor has been forcing him to build the Death Star. But guess what? Galen has secretly sabotaged the weapon design, building a critical flaw in the reactor. Smart man. Galen also reveals that the blueprints, or the plans proving the weak point, can be found on the planet Scarif. However, before the message can finish, the Death Star fires on Jedha City as a live weapons test. Holy sh*. Obviously, the city starts to fall apart, and Andor, Chirrut, Baze, Jyn, and Bodhi leave before it blows up. Gerrera, on the other hand, refuses to leave and dies right then and there. They really massacred God knows how many people just to test the weapon. Truly evil. Also at this point, Tarkin officially takes control of the Death Star project away from Krennic, which clearly pisses Krennic off. Now, Andor reports everything to the rebellion, including the fact that Galen is now on the planet Edu. However, Jyn can no longer prove to Andor or anyone else that her father sabotaged the weapon, since the hologram was destroyed. Still, Jyn decides to go to Edu to bring her father back as a witness. So the group moves ahead and finally reaches Edu, where they see Galen at an Imperial research facility. But before Jin gets to her father, Krennic arrives there as well and threatens to execute Galen's team for the security leak. However, to save his team, Galen takes the blame himself. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean crap to Krennic because this jerk kills Galen's team anyway. At this point, Jin decides it's finally time to reveal herself. But the next moment, a rebel bombing raid hits the facility, which injures Galen really badly. Oh man. She was so close to getting her dad back. Sadly, Galen dies right in Jin's arms before the group escapes in a stolen Imperial shuttle. Meanwhile, Krennic travels to the volcanic planet Mustafar to personally meet, wait for it, Darth Vader. Man, this guy still gives me chills. Of course, Krennic wants Vader's help to deal with this mess, and he explains that the security leak wasn't his fault. But Vader is still pissed off, and he force chokes him for a bit as a warning. Yeah, Vader is not exactly the listening type. Elsewhere, Jin is back on the Rebel base, where she suggests raiding the Imperial archive on Scarif. There, the rebels can steal the Death Star's full blueprints to prove the reactor flaw is real. However, the Rebel Council decides to chicken out, since there's no evidence proving the flaw, so it could be a suicide mission. So what? Jin gets pissed off, so she, along with K2SO, Shiru, Baze, and Bodhi, decide to go rogue and get the schematics themselves. Also, at this point, it's clear that Andor has grown closer to Jin because they went through so much together, so he obviously joins Jin on this mission as well. Now, while Jin and her gang break into the citadel at Scarif that holds the plan, Tarkin gets alerted about the break-in. And since Tarkin controls the Death Star now, he brings the darn thing near Scarif to investigate the issue further. One good thing happens though. A fleet of rebels who actually care about the cause arrives to help Jin at the last moment. That's the spirit, guys. By this time, Jin has finally found the Death Star plans. However, poor K2SO sacrifices himself to help Jin and Andor. Oh no. To make things worse, jerkwad Krennic catches up to them and injures Andor as well. Ooh, that's not it, as Chiru also sacrifices himself while restoring the communication on Scarif so the rebel fleet can send help. Bodhi, on the other hand, relays the message to the rebel fleet through a ship before it gets destroyed, killing Bodhi. Finally, we have Baze, who continues to fight on before getting killed eventually. Sheesh, that's a lot of deaths in a very short time. Cut back to Jin, the poor girl gets cornered by Krennic. However, before the bastard can harm Jin, a wounded Andor shoots him down just in time. Finally, Jin transmits the stolen plans to the rebel fleet, and then she helps Andor get back to safety. Seems like they survived, right? Well, hold on to that thought. Right after Jin successfully transmits the Death Star plans to the rebel fleet, Tarkin fires the Death Star directly at the base where Jin and Andor are stuck. Of course, the Death Star plans are now with the rebels, but Jin and Andor die because of the blast. Man, I really wanted these two to survive. After all this mess, Vader's ship, the Devastator, intercepts the rebel ship. But guess what? The rebels have escaped on a small ship called the Tantive IV with the Death Star plans. Finally, we see Princess Leia getting her hands on the Death Star plans. Yeah, we know what happens now. Vader will arrive on Tantive IV and capture Leia, and so on. You know the rest. The movie basically ends where A New Hope begins, with hope. Alright, so with The Last Jedi, we arrive right where The Force Awakens left off, right after the destruction of Starkiller Base. We see the Resistance evacuating its base on Dakar because a First Order fleet led by General Hux has arrived along with a massive ship called the Fulminatrix. Basically, Snoke is pissed after the destruction of the Starkiller, and he has ordered the First Order to hunt down, well, everyone. We again meet Poe Dameron, who ignores the leadership's orders and flies in solo to take out the Fulminatrix's cannons. Well, thanks to Poe's heroism and the Resistance bombers, the Fulminatrix is destroyed. However, the Resistance does lose a heck of a lot of people in the process. That also includes a pilot named Paige Tico, who sacrifices herself to land the final blow on the enemy ship. Oh man. Meanwhile, on the First Order ship, Snoke literally trash talks Ren, or Ben, I don't know, for losing to Rey. However, Ren is pissed like anything and he wants just one chance to prove himself. Prove what? You're a heartless jerk? Well, that you are, man. Next, we cut to Octu. Yeah, the ocean planet where Rey finally meets Luke Skywalker. Immediately after meeting the legend, the myth, Rey offers him his old lightsaber. Shockingly though, Luke just tosses the lightsaber aside and refuses to help. Luke also learns that Han is dead, and after seeing Chewie along with Rey, and he's obviously heartbroken. However, Luke still refuses to teach Rey or anyone else he believes the Jedi should end, and blames himself for Ben's fall to the dark side. No man, They really need you. Meanwhile, we see the Resistance fleet fleeing by launching in light speed. But they get shocked after realizing that Snoke's massive ship, the Supremacy, is still tracking them. How? It's almost impossible to follow someone when they're at light speed. Turns out that the First Order has somehow found a way to track ships through light speed. What's worse is that Ren personally leads this attack on the Rebellion fleet, and this guy kills many members of the Rebellion by damaging the fleet. In fact, Leia also gets badly injured after almost getting stranded in open space after the blast. Of course, she finds her way back to the ship using the Force, but she still falls unconscious. Meanwhile, back on Ahch 2, Luke gets inside Rey's ship and finds R2-D2, who plays Leia's old message that she sent to Obi-Wan years ago. Well, that ignites some memories, and Luke agrees to teach Rey. Meanwhile, Vice Admiral Holdo takes command of the Rebellion fleet because Leia is still unconscious. However, Holdo refuses to share her evacuation plan with Poe. Apparently, when Poe disobeyed Leia's direct command during the Dakar evacuation, he got demoted. Well, you could say the entire thing really pisses off the dude. Come on, people. It's no time to fight amongst ourselves. Meanwhile, on the fleet, we see that Finn is worried about Rey, so he teams up with mechanic Rose Tico. Yep, she's the sister of pilot Paige Tico who died in the opening sequence. Apparently, Finn wants to take Leia's tracking beam away from the ship so Rey can track him outside the Rebellion ship. Basically, Finn wants Rey not to arrive on the ship, because Ren will eventually find them even if they're at light speed. However, Rose has another idea. Basically, Rose says they should instead track down the First Order ship and disable its tracking device. Well, that's a better idea. Now Finn and Rose fill Poe in on the plan, who decides they both should find a hacker who can lead them to the First Order's ship. Meanwhile, he'll stay back on the Resistance ship to make them go light speed once the tracker is disabled. At this point, Finn gives back Leia's beacon to Poe, which means he trusts this plan will work and Rey will be safe on the ship. Meanwhile, on Ahch 2, we learn that Rey and Kylo have unintentionally started communicating through their unexplained Force connection. Interesting. Moving on, Luke gives Rey some very begrudging lessons on the Force. During the training though, Luke gets kinda scared after realizing that Rey is naturally drawn to the dark side. Oh man, we don't want another good person falling to the dark side. Around the same time, Finn and Rose travel to the casino city Canto Bight to find a hacker but get arrested instead. You've got to be kidding me. Back on Ahch 2, Luke then finally reveals what happened with young Ben. Apparently, Luke sensed Ben's corruption early and he got scared. In all that confusion and anxiety, Luke went to confront Ben while he was asleep. But right then, Ben woke up and turned on his uncle Luke and went to the dark side. After that, he destroyed Luke's new Jedi temple and killed all his students. That's awful. Meanwhile, on Canto Bight, a shady hacker named DJ agrees to help Finn and Rose. And as promised, DJ does help them break out of prison without, getting killed. Around the same time, Rey talks to Ren using the Force, and shockingly, Ren reveals what actually happened the night he turned evil. Apparently, according to Ben, Luke didn't just arrive to confront Ben when he was asleep. Instead, Luke tried to kill Ben in his sleep with a lightsaber, but Ben woke up at the last moment. That is why he turned against Ben and chose the dark side. Yeah, I don't know who to believe at this point. Even Rey is frustrated because she really just wants to know the truth about her parents. I mean, she does have a strong connection to the Force, so Luke might know her parents. However, Rey doesn't get any answer from Luke, so she decides to leave. That night, Rey and Ren connect again, and they hold hands through the Force. Aww. However, Luke catches them being all lovey-dovey and attacks Rey in anger. However, Rey fights back and learns from Luke that he never intended to kill Ren. In fact, he was about to put his lightsaber back that night, but Ren woke up before he could do that. However, Rey believes that Ren can still turn to the light side, so she leaves Ahch 2 to confront the dude directly. After Rey leaves, Luke almost gives up on the Jedi, but then a ghost Yoda arrives and tells him that it's dang time to teach Rey properly. Yeah, about time. Back with Finn and Rose, DJ agrees to help the two disable the tracker on the First Order ship, but he will do it for a price, of course. Yeah, I don't trust this dude. Back on the Resistance flagship, we see that the First Order is still able to track them non-stop. At this point, Poe discovers Holdo has no plans of fighting back. Instead, she has actually been secretly evacuating everyone on small transports. come on, don't be a coward. Poe realizes that she's abandoning ship, so he stages a damn mutiny. Around this time, Rey arrives on the First Order ship, but instead of speaking to her, Ren gets arrested. Really, dude. Not only that, but Ren brings Rey right in front of Snoke, the biggest jerk on the ship. Around the same time, Finn and Rose arrive on the same First Order ship with DJ to disable the tracking device. However, before they can do their job, stormtroopers arrest them on the orders of Captain Phasma. Uh-oh, Phasma might still be holding a grudge against Finn. Around the same time, Poe goes fully against Holdo, but right then, Leia regains consciousness, and right away she knocks down Poe with a stun blaster. Apparently Leia agrees with Holdo's plan because she doesn't want to lose any more people. And of course, she can't really have the resistance split in two. In fact, Leia herself leaves the ship along with an unconscious Poe in one of the transport ships. Back on the First Order ship, Snoke reveals to Rey that he shockingly engineered her whole Force connection with Ren. Holy hell! Snoke basically wanted to lure Rey to him so he could find Luke's location. Then he tries to read Rey's mind while she resists. Around the same time, Poe wakes up in the transport vehicle. Leia tells him that they are abandoning the ship to head towards another rebel base on the planet Crate. Basically, Holdo stays on the abandoned ship so she can take all the heat from the First Order while everyone else can escape and maybe not die. Oh, I really underestimated her. Meanwhile, we learn that it was DJ who betrayed Finn and Rose for a better price. Told you we can't trust the guy. By now, Snoke had gotten Luke's location by reading Rey's mind. Then, he asks Ren to kill the poor girl. However, Ren has somewhat come back to his senses. Also, Ren realizes that Snoke must have also manipulated him from the very beginning. So instead of killing Rey, Ren slices the old geezer Snoke in half. Yeah, suck it big time, Snoke. Rey and Ren then fight Snoke's guards and defeat them together. Afterward, Ren asks Rey to join him and rule together, saying they should ask both the Jedi and the Resistance to buzz off. Ren also reveals that Rey's parents were nobodies. They were just wanderers who sold her for drinking money. Of course, Rey refuses to believe such crap. Now, while Rey and Ren start to fight and while Finn and Rose are about to get killed, Hux orders his fleet to target Leia and Poe's escape pods. And in the exact moment, Holdo sacrifices herself by ramming her cruiser straight through the enemy ship, where all of this is happening. In that chaos, Finn manages to defeat Phasma, and then he, Rose, and BB-8 escape the burning ship. Meanwhile, Ren wakes up after the blasts and realizes that Rey has escaped. Right then, Hux arrives on the scene, but of course, Ren doesn't reveal that he killed Snoke. Instead, he force chokes Hux to get him to submit and declare himself the new leader. Around this time, the Resistance group arrives on Crate, but sadly, Ren leads a charge directly at them. Now, when everyone thinks all hope is lost, Luke arrives on the scene. Finally, dude, about damn time. Seeing that Luke is here, Ren asks his men to stop attacking the Resistance. Why? Because he wants to fight Luke alone. And then we get one of the most awesome lightsaber duels in Star Wars history. It's a tough fight against Luke, but Ren finally manages to strike his master because, well, Luke lets him. Oh no. However, at that very moment, Ren's blade just passes straight through Luke. Huh? What's happening? Now we learn that Luke never physically arrived here. Surprisingly, Luke is projecting himself across the galaxy using the Force, while his real body remains on Ahch-To. Luke is doing this to buy enough time for the Resistance to escape through a gap with Rey's help. That's one heck of a trick. However, Luke literally exerted his life force to project his image across the galaxy. I mean that, unfortunately, he won't survive. Oh my, that's not good. And just like that, Luke watches the twin sun set one last time and dies peacefully, becoming one with the Force. Wait, let me just wipe off my tears. Of course, everyone's sad because they not only lost Han, but also Luke. But hey, at least Leia and the new gang managed to escape using the Millennium Falcon, so I'll count it as a bittersweet ending. Alright, now it's time for us to take a little detour with Solo, a Star Wars story, which is basically a love letter to Han Solo. This is basically part of Han's journey we haven't seen so far. So the movie picks up 6 years after the formation of the Empire. We're in the shipbuilding world of Corellia, where we meet a young scavenger named Han and his girlfriend Kira. Aww. Han has a girlfriend. Anywho, Han and Qi'ra are trying to escape their crime boss, Lady Proxima, who's the leader of an underground gang called the White Worms. Apparently, after a job gone wrong, Han steals a vial of valuable hyperfuel called coaxium. Now, Han hopes to see this coaxium to bribe his way out of this hell with his girlfriend. And just so you know, Lady Proxima is literally a massive worm sensitive to sunlight. So after getting cornered by her, Han exposes her to sunlight, which burns the worm lady badly. Well, this gives Han and Qi'ra the perfect opportunity to flee the city. Sadly for them, though, they are being chased by an enforcer named Moloch. Moving on, Han and Qi'ra make it to the space fort from where they can escape this city for good. However, while Han does make it past the security check, the White Worms capture Qi'ra right before the gates close on Han.
Security, there's been a breach.
Aw man, Khaleesi might get pissed. At this time, Han is heartbroken and hellbent on getting Qi'ra back. So he enlists in the Imperial military as a pilot and invents the surname Solo since he has no one with him. That's just sad. Now we jump 3 years later. Sadly, Han has been kicked out of flight school and is now a foot soldier on the battlefield of Mimban. There, Han meets Tobias Beckett, a con man posing as an officer. There's also Val, Tobias' partner, and an alien crook named Rio Durant. However, Han figures out that these three are simply thieves disguising themselves as Imperial soldiers. But instead of turning them in, Han asks if he can join their crooked band. Sadly though, Tobias isn't so keen on having Han on his team, so he uses his dialogue to announce Han as a deserter. Come on, man. Because of that, Han gets thrown into a pit by the Imperial officers, the real ones. Inside this pit, Han is supposed to fight what everyone calls the Beast. But in reality, this beast is none other than, wait for it, Chewie. The sicko officers have enslaved Chewie like he's some animal. Han, however, speaks Chewie's language to team up with the Wookiee. Then, Chewie and Han escape the hellish place together and hitch a ride with Beckett's crew as they flee the planet. At this point, Tobias' group also sees some potential in Han and they agree to take him and Chewie along. Later, Tobias brings Han and Chewie along for a heist on the planet Vandor. On this snowy and cold-ass planet, the group wants to steal a shipment of coaxium from a high-speed train. It's a good plan and all, but as expected, things don't go as planned. In the middle of the heist, Tobias' group is ambushed by masked pirates called the Cloud Riders. Also, these ruthless pirates are led by a mysterious figure called Envis Nest. Ooh, mystery. Love it. Anywho, in all the chaos, poor Rio gets killed almost instantly. After that, Val also sacrifices herself while blowing up a bridge to cover their escape. Oh man. In the end, Han has no freaking choice but to drop the coaxium into a ravine to save Beckett and Chewie. So yeah, the heist turns out to be a total bust. At this point, we learn that Tobias was hired for this job by Dryden Voss, head of a powerful crime syndicate. And well, the coaxium is his ticket out of all this. But since Tobias and his guy couldn't get the coaxium, they decide to meet Voss in person. Now, after arriving on Voss's yacht, Han sees a familiar face. That's right. It's none other than Qi'ra, who, by the way, has become Voss's top lieutenant. That's one way to survive hell. Obviously, Qi'ra is shocked and surprised to see Han, but she just pretends that she doesn't care much. In fact, it seems like Qi'ra is quite close to Voss? Ouch.
From where?
You'll be hard-pushed to find that anywhere outside an Imperial vault. Scarif, maybe Mercy Island.
That's impossible.
Anywho, Voss is pissed that Tobias lost the coaxium, so he orders his men to kill him and, of course, Han and Chewie. But then, Han proposes a new plan to save themselves from certain death or torture. Han suggests that they can steal raw and unrefined coaxium straight from the source, which are the spice mines of Kessel. Of course, it won't be easy because the mines are controlled by the dangerous Pike Syndicate. Still, Voss not only approves of the plan, but also asks Qi'ra to accompany Han's gang to see that they don't screw up this time. Moving on, Han and the gang need a fast ship to pull off this heist. So Qi'ra introduces Han to a rather charming smuggler named Lando. Oh hell, we know Lando. We also meet Lando's smartass droid co-pilot L337, who, surprisingly, is an advocate for droid rights. Wait, that's a thing? Anywho, to earn a ship from Lando, Han plays a Sabbac card game with the guy. However, Lando cheats using a hidden card because he doesn't want to lose his ship. However, the dude also kinda likes Tobias and Qi'ra. So charming Lando fixes Han's group's own ship, the Millennium Falcon, in exchange for some cut from the Kessel job, of course. Amazing. Oh, and yes, Lando and L337 also tag along for the job. On the ship, Han finally confronts Qi'ra to see if she still feels the same way, and they finally kiss. Yeah. I think she feels something for you, bud. Moving on, thanks to the Falcon, Han's gang finally arrives on Kessel. There, the group infiltrates the mines disguised as slavers with, of course, Han and Chewie posing as captives. Now, while L-337 sparks a slave android uprising, Han actually manages to steal the coaxium. However, the team barely escapes due to all the gunfire. Also, L-337 gets damaged, like really badly, during the fight, which devastates Lando. Anywho, the group now gets back on the Falcon to fly the hell away from there. However, on their way, a group of Imperial TIE fighters chases down the Falcon. But while Han flies the Falcon like freaking Tom Cruise from Top Gun, Tobias shoots down the TIE fighters. After that, Han even manages to save the Falcon from a really massive octopus-like creature. The hell is that thing? Finally, Han's gang lands on Savareen, where they get confronted by Enfys Nest, who removes her mask, and she's a really sweet but unhappy teenager. Apparently, Enfys Nest and her gang are not pirates, but freedom fighters. Apparently, Voss has been using the coaxium in league with the Empire to take over more planets. And well, that's why Enfys Nest stopped Tobias' gang during the train heist. After hearing all this, Han decides that he'll help Enfys Nest, but sadly, Tobias is not interested in going against Voss. So he says his goodbye to Han and just leaves. Before leaving though, Tobias tells Han to find him on Tatooine after he's done with this suicide mission. Oh, he will find you. Now, Chewie, Kira, and Han meet Voss and deliver the coaxium. But it turns out that Han decided to hand over the real coaxium to Enfys and deliver the fake material to Voss. Ooh, that's a risky move. Unfortunately though, Voss already knows about Han's brilliant plan. And that's all thanks to, wait for it, Tobias. What the hell? That's right, Tobias was working as Voss's inside man all along. Since the real material is already with Enfys, Voss sends his entire army after the pirates. Uh-oh. But guess what? Han predicted all this, along with Kira. The reality is, Han did hand over the real coaxium to Voss, but he faked this entire situation to get Voss's army away from him. Oh, that's so freaking badass. Right then, Tobias shoots the only two guards protecting Voss. Now, he's the only one with a gun. So Tobias asks Chewie to carry the coaxium and come with him. And as soon as Tobias leaves, Kira and Han start to fight Voss. And eventually, Kira kills the asshole. He deserved it. Now that Voss is out of the picture, Han runs after Tobias. Meanwhile, Kira contacts her true master, who is none other than Darth Maul. Yeah, it's the same dude who gets killed by Obi-Wan. We don't know why or when Kira started working for Darth Maul, but she does save Han by lying that Tobias killed Voss and took the coaxium. Han, on the other hand, confronts Tobias and shoots him dead before he can leave. Of course, Han is happy that he can be with Kira. However, his girlfriend truly becomes his ex after taking over the Voss's organization and leaving the planet alone. Man, that's heartbreaking. Now, Han delivers the real coaxium to Enfys, and once that's done, he heads back to Lando's place to challenge for the card game. This time though, Han sees through Lando's cheating trick and manages to beat him fair and square. So yeah, Han actually wins the Falcon and uses it to fly to Tatooine with Chewie just as Tobias asked. Man, that's one good backstory. Star Wars IX. The Rise of Skywalker kicks off a year after Luke's death on Crate. Of course, things aren't exactly great because of the Final Order, but they get worse when a mysterious broadcast goes out across the galaxy. Now, what's scary about this broadcast is the voice of Emperor Palpatine. Wait, but Palpatine is dead. He is, right? Anyway, the broadcast consists of a message in which Palpatine, or whoever it is, makes it clear they want revenge. They always want revenge. Now we see Supreme Leader Kylo Ren arriving at the volcanic planet of Mustafar. Oh, that's where Anakin truly became Darth Vader. On this planet, Ren slaughters a group of dark side cultists and steals a device called a Sith Wayfinder, which was once owned by Darth Vader. Interesting. Now Ren uses the same device to track down the broadcast source and eventually arrives at the hidden Sith world, Exegol. There, Ren makes his way deep into an ancient citadel where he discovers that Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, is alive. Jeez, I mean, how? How? Ren learns that Sidious survived in some sort of machine-sustained body. Not only that, it was Sidious who secretly created Snoke in the first place. Holy hell. After that, Sidious reveals a massive fleet called the Final Order and agrees to give Ren the command of the darn thing. But first, Ren must do one thing for Sidious. Apparently, the old zombie guy wants Ren to kill Rey if he wants command of the Final Order. However, Sidious warns Ren that Rey is not not who he thinks she is. Now, what does that mean? Now we arrive on the Millennium Falcon, where we reunite with Finn, Poe, and Chewie. Finn's gang meets an informant who actually has some information from a spy inside the Final Order. And yeah, the intel is that Palpatine is alive and kicking. Well, not exactly kicking, but he's still alive, and that's enough to shake everyone to their core. After hearing this, the trio decides to take the message to the Resistance base on the jungle planet Ajin Klaas. There, we meet Rey, who, by the way, is now training under Leia. However, the rookie girl is struggling to connect with the Force and the spirits of past Jedi. Oh, also, even now, Rey and Ren continue to share unwanted visions through the Force bond. Anywho, Poe and Finn now arrive and confirm to the Resistance that Jerkwad Palpatine has returned, and he is in the secret Sith world Exegol. Some believe that he may have returned using dark science or cloning, but the how isn't important. What's important is that Palpatine has built the biggest fleet in history, and he will launch attacks on all three worlds in about 16 hours. That's very short notice. After hearing all this, Rey decides to finish Luke's unfinished mission. Basically, she wants to find a Wayfinder to track down Exegol. Now, how does Rey know all this? Well, apparently after Luke's death, Rey found his research book on the Jedi and Sith, and Luke mentioned the Sith Wayfinder in his notes and the coordinates to find it. So without wasting any moments, Rey heads out with Poe, Finn, Chewie, and C-3PO to the desert world Pisana. According to Luke's notes, this is where Rey can find the Wayfinder. After reaching Pisana, the group notices a rather entertaining local festival. But hey, there's no time to fool around, so they keep moving ahead and run into, surprise, surprise, Lando. Of course, Chewie is over the moon seeing good old Lando, who tells the group about a smuggler named Ochi. According to Lando, only 2 Sith Wayfinders were made, and since Ren already has one, the group must find the last one. Then, Lando tells the group that Ochi's abandoned ship might hold clues to the second Wayfinder. Unfortunately for Rey though, Ren tracks the group by seeing Rey in one of his visions. Instantly, the First Order troops start to chase the group. While running away, Rey's gang falls through quicksand and arrives in some underground tunnels. Inside these tunnels, Rey and her friends find Ochi's skeleton. Oh damn, not only that, but they also find a strange dagger inscribed in ancient Sith script. It's so darn ancient that no one can read it except for C-3PO, of course. Well, C-3PO does translate the text and knows exactly where they can find the Wayfinder. But guess what? As per his programming, C-3PO is forbidden to translate the Sith text. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Right then, Rey and the gang get cornered by a massive anaconda-like creature. However, Rey notices that the creature is hurt, so instead of fighting it, Rey uses the Force to heal it. Yeah, she can do that apparently, after getting out of the tunnels. Everyone boards Ochi's ship. However, Rey senses that Ren is here, so she heads out to confront him. Meanwhile, poor Chewie moves ahead to look for Rey and gets captured by Ren's stormtroopers. Ah, damn it. Moving on, Rey instantly destroys Ren's ship before he can even land on the planet. Now, Rey realizes that the First Order ship is flying away with Chewie, so she uses the Force to stop the ship mid-air. Dude, that's so awesome. At the same time, Ren also uses the Force to free the ship from Rey. In that struggle, Rey accidentally unleashes Force lightning that destroys the very ship that was carrying Chewie. Aw man, don't take Chewie away from us, please. After that, Rey and the group get the hell away from the planet on Ochi's ship. However, what Rey or the group doesn't know is that Chewie is alive. Apparently, the First Order guards brought Chewie on board the Falcon, which they also seized. Chewie was never inside the First Order ship that got destroyed. Thank goodness. However, Chewie is still in trouble because he's a prisoner of the First Order now. Cut back to Ochi's ship. Rey also comes across a new droid, D-O, who is actually very scared of, well, everyone. Moving on, Rey's gang now arrives on the snowy planet Kijimi to get the dagger translated. There, they meet smuggler Zori Bliss, who interestingly is an old friend of Poe's. Moving on, the gang learns that a tiny droid smith named Babu Frick can unlock the Sith text in C-3PO's memory. But to do that, Babu will have to wipe out C-3PO's memory completely. It's not worth it. Of course, the group isn't sure about this, but then C-3PO decides to sacrifice himself for the mission. Aw man. Well, thanks to C-3PO's sacrifice, Babu decodes the message and reveals that the second Wayfinder is in the wreckage of the second Death Star. I mean, that makes sense. Around the same time, Ren's ship arrives on the Kijimi after tracking down Rey. At the same time, Rey also uses the Force and realizes that Chewie is alive and on the ship. So Rey and team sneak into Ren's ship, and as soon as they do that, Ren confronts Rey and starts fighting her. Around the same time, Finn, Poe, and Chewie get nearly executed by Ren's soldiers. But right then, General Hux saves the group. What? But he was always with the dark side. Turns out, Hux hates Ren, and for that very reason, he has been leaking information to the Resistance. Oh my gosh, so he's the mysterious spy we heard about during the opening scene. After their duel though, Ren sees yet another vision in which he learns who exactly Rey is. Shockingly, Rey is actually Palpatine's granddaughter. What the actual hell, dude? Apparently, Rey was sent to Jakku and was left there to protect her from Darth Sidious. And it was Rey's parents who left her on Jakku, who loved her very much. However, Palpatine saw the future and feared what Rey would become, so he wants her killed. And it was Palpatine who also had Rey's parents killed as well. My god, that's a lot to handle at once. Around the same time, Ren also reveals that he and Rey form a Force dyad. Basically, it means that Rey and Ren are two halves of one whole. That's quite a revelation. After learning all that, Rey escapes with the rest of the team since they've already rescued Chewie, and as soon as they leave, Hux is executed by the First Order because it was pretty clear that he was the spy for the Resistance. Later, the team travels to the ocean moon Kefbir, where they find the Death Star wreckage. Around the same time, they also meet Janna, a former stormtrooper who is now leading a community of fellow deserters. Janna very graciously gives Rey everything she needs to get to the Death Star wreckage, which lies in the middle of the ocean. It takes some time, but Rey eventually locates the second Wayfinder inside the Death Star ruins. But of course, Ren tracks down Rey before she can leave with the Wayfinder. In fact, immediately after arriving on the Death Star ruins, Ren destroys the Wayfinder. Dude, come on. Of course, this pisses Rey off the right amount to give her all against Ren. Now, Rey and Ren fight like maniacs, but in the middle of the duel, Leia reaches out to her son using the Force. Sadly, Leia has already been too weak, and she uses the last bit of her Force to reach out to her son. Poor Leia doesn't even say much to Ren and simply dies. For God's sake, the entire OG gang is gone now. However, while Ren is distracted, Rey stabs the guy right in the stomach. At the same time, Rey also realizes that Leia is gone. She is. Really? At the moment, Rey feels bad for giving into her rage against Ren, so she heals the guy like she healed that anaconda creature. Now, Rey kinda tells Ren that she likes him before leaving the darn planet. After Rey leaves, Ren has a vision of his father Han, and finally, Ren gives up on the dark side and goes back to being Ben. Of course, Sidious is pissed, so he orders the destruction of Kijimi and kills millions. So yeah, the final order has begun. Around the same time, Luke's spirit talks to Rey and gifts her Leia's lightsaber. Luke says that he and Leia always knew about Rey's past, but they still trained her because of her pure heart. That's kind. Now with Luke's guidance, Rey finally leaves the Resistance fleet straight towards Exegol. The Resistance launches an attack on the colossal Sith fleet while Rey infiltrates the Citadel to confront Sidious head-on. After meeting up with Rey, Sidious reveals his true plan. Shockingly, Sidious wants Rey to kill him in anger so his spirit can pass into her, which will complete his resurrection. Oh no, this ain't happening. Around the same time, Kylo Ren also arrives and joins Rey against Sidious. However, the cranky Sith grandpa drains Ren and Rey's combined life force to fully restore himself. Dude, you're gonna be dead in about like 10 seconds. Thinking that Ren is likely dead and Rey's already lying on the ground, Sidious is sure that he won. But right then, Rey hears the voices of countless Jedi from across history who urge her to fight. Rey does exactly that and draws strength from all the Jedi. Seeing that Rey is back up, Sidious launches the Sith lightning at her. However, Rey overpowers her ugly granddad and deflects his own lightning back at him. Goes on for a while and eventually Sidious gets cooked completely, which means he dies. After that, Sidious's massive fleet also gets destroyed. However, Rey collapses onto the ground after that, and she's possibly dead after pulling off the stunt. The next moment, Ren comes out of the hole. Yeah, he ain't dead, and uses the last of his life force to revive Rey. That's redemption. Finally, the two share a kiss before Ren fades away and becomes one with the Force. Once all this is over, Rey returns to Tatooine to bury Luke and Leia's lightsabers. And finally, Rey gives herself the last name Skywalker. Yeah, she's now Rey Skywalker.
Who are you?
I'm Rey.
Rey who?
Rey Skywalker.
Alright, so before we get on with The Mandalorian and Grogu, let me give you a little context first. The Mandalorian and Grogu is the follow-up to the very popular Mandalorian series, which has so far gotten 3 seasons. Of course, you'll understand the movie better if you have already watched the series or seen our video on it. For now, you should know that the film is set around 5 years after Episode 6. So yeah, the Empire has had its butts kicked, and its Emperor killed, but there are still some fragments remaining. The story is centered on Din Djarin, a lone bounty hunter from a warrior culture called the Mandalorians. Djarin's life has always been exciting, but it gets even more exciting after Djarin adopts a Force-sensitive child named Grogu, who many fans like to call Baby Yoda. No, Grogu isn't Yoda that we all know, but the similar appearance makes you feel like you're watching the baby version of the Master Jedi himself. Now let's get straight to it. The film kicks off on the snowy, lawless planet called Outer Rim. There we meet an Imperial warlord, Commander Barrow, who is shaking down the planet's local leaders for protection money. Then we meet Din Djarin, who infiltrates Barrow's base and fights through a heck of a lot of stormtroopers. Meanwhile, Grogu causes chaos of his own using the Force. Well, the entire thing leads to a rather chaotic chase, but eventually, Djarin kills Barrow. At this point, Djarin works as a bounty hunter for the New Republic, which has risen to replace the Empire. So Djarin's New Republic handler, Garazeb Aurelius, arrives on the scene, and it seems like Garazeb is pissed at Djarin for not capturing Barrow alive for questioning. Now we arrive at a Delphi base, which is basically a military outpost for the New Republic. There, Djarin meets his contact, Colonel Ward, who gives him a new ship because his old one got destroyed. Then, Ward gives Djarin a rather delicate mission. Apparently, 2 powerful Hutt crime bosses, known only as the Twins, want help retrieving someone. In exchange, the Twins will provide the Republic with intel on Imperial fugitives, which also includes a mysterious figure called Commander Coin. Now that Djarin has his new mission, he travels to the Hutt's homeworld, Nal Hutta. There, he learns that his mission is to rescue Rada. That's right, Rada, the son of the now-dead crime lord, Jabba the Hutt. For some reason, Rada has gone missing on a moon called Shikari. So, while Djarin moves ahead towards Shikari. After arriving on the moon, Djarin instantly discovers that Rada has become a popular gladiator.
That's why I fight in the pits. They feared him, but they cheer for me. So no, I don't need to be rescued.
Wait, that's Rada? He has really grown up. Djarin also learns that Rada, who's definitely the cute baby we saw in Clone Wars, is working for a crime boss named Janu, because he owes Janu money. What's even more surprising is that Rada doesn't want to be rescued. Instead, this dude wants to win his freedom from Janu fair and square and escape his father's criminal legacy. Good for you, Rada. Then, Rada reveals to Djarin that the Twins actually want him dead. Why? It's simple. By killing Rada, the Twins want control of the Hutt criminal empire. Dude, it's like the same story we've seen in the Clone Wars. Regardless, Djarin continues to dig deeper, and soon he learns that Janu is actually Commander Coin in disguise. Of course! We also learn that Janu doesn't like Rada being alive, so he plans to have him killed during his next gladiator match. For that, Janu will release a horde of monstrous creatures into the arena. Naturally, Djarin warns Rada, who not only doubts Djarin, but also gets himself and Djarin captured. Now, Djarin will have to fight Rada in the next gladiator match. During the fight, Djarin manages to defeat Rada because he's the main character in the movie. However, Djarin refuses to kill the buff Hutt. But, well, Janu releases the monsters anyway, and this plan falls flat on its face. The creatures break loose in the arena and even attack the crowd. Of course, Rada uses the chaos to his advantage and escapes, because there's no way in hell he's going back. Djarin chases Rada and eventually captures him. However, instead of leaving with Rada, which was his mission, Djarin decides to investigate Commander Coin's lead instead. Now, Djarin teams up with Garazeb and enters Coin's hidden compound. Of course, the duo has to fight a great number of minions, but eventually they manage to capture Coin alive. Now, Djarin returns to Adelphi and hands over Coin instead of Rada, which clearly annoys and pisses off Colonel Ward. Naturally, Ward warns Djarin that the Hutts won't be happy if they don't get Rada. But hey, Djarin doesn't care a bit about the Twins. Moving on, Djarin takes Rada to his home and hires small alien droid smiths to upgrade Rada's ship. Once Rada's ship is ready, he leaves for God knows where, after thanking the Mandalorian. Later that night, Embo, yet another bounty hunter hired by the Twins, ambushes Djarin's home. And after some struggle, Embo captures Djarin and brings him to the Hutt Palace. Uh-oh. However, Grogu and the droid smiths somehow escape and get all set to rescue Djarin. Meanwhile, the twins place Rada in a torturous restraint device. At the same time, Djarin is thrown into an underground pool, where the poor guy must fight God knows what kind of monsters. As expected, Djarin goes against some really powerful amphibious warriors. That's not it though, as our beloved Mandalorian also goes giant serpent called Dragon Snake. Sure, it's a tough fight, but Djarin manages to not get eaten by the ugly-ass monster. Sadly though, during the fight, Djarin gets poisoned after being bitten by the darn serpent. That's not good. However, Grogu and his droid allies break Djarin out just as the poison is getting really bad. At this point, Djarin is in really bad shape, and he can't even move. So he orders Grogu to flee without him while he holds off the enemies pursuing them. But leaving behind Djarin isn't an option for Grogu, so when Djarin goes unconscious, Baby Yoda hides him somewhere safe before heading out to get some help. After a while, Grogu runs into a kind fisherman named Gattori. Immediately, Gattori realizes that Djarin might die soon, so he almost instantly brews an antidote from local herbs. Once the antidote is ready, Grogu rushes back and gives it to Djarin, which, well, works like magic and saves the guy. After fully recovering, Djarin decides he has had enough of the twins, so he goes after the scumbags directly. Now, Djarin and Grogu use a salvaged ship to storm into the Hutt Palace. They also fight through several security droids before finally reaching the throne room. There, Grogu uses his smarts and frees Rada, and once the gladiator Hutt is out, he beats the crap out of the twins. Meanwhile, Djarin goes against Embo and actually manages to overpower the jerk bounty hunter. Finally, due to all the chaos, the twins fall into their own trapdoor, where they are devoured by the dragon snake. And that's why you shouldn't have monsters as pets. After seeing that the twins are done for, Embo abandons them and flees. Once all that's over, Rada decides to stay behind and help the New Republic any way he can. Djarin and Grogu, on the other hand, move ahead towards their next adventure. Alright, that's it for today's video. Honestly, I can't get enough of Star Wars. But hey, even I might need a break now. And the best thing to do during my break is help out Optimus Prime in Transformers Eternal War. Seriously, your Transformers buddies definitely need some assistance against Chaos Legion. So if you haven't already, click the link in the pinned comment and pre-register now to claim your exclusive rewards. While I wait for the next one, you guys can check out some other amazing videos on the channel. Until next time, toodles!